Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of exciting and entertaining racing action in the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship Season 18 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing and proudly hosted by none other than SimRacing International. That's right, we're back once again for another round of entertainment and here we are today for round number 5 of 10. We're made away to United Kingdom and it is here at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit that we'll get to see our drivers take on the 2.3 mile course with its 9 fast flying corners. Home to the season opener for what is the GT World Challenge European Sprint Series. It is a circuit which, whilst not commonly associated with international racing as of this day, in the past it of course was home to many a major international race, whether it be the British Grand Prix before it was relocated to Silverstone, alternatively major FI events. It is one of those circuits whereby under the hood, whilst it may sound simple on paper, it really is one of those circuits absolutely brimming with complexity, because the aim of the game around here is to make sure you carry every mile an hour from corner to corner and make the most of your exit speed. With limited straights in supply, therefore overtaking opportunities are going to be restricted as well, but it's not to say you can't make overtakes here in the United Kingdom, and indeed the Garden of England that is Kent. What you've got to be able to do is be very bold on the brakes and be able to be daring where others will not, to be able to look up the inside or try to go all the way around the outside. Do so and you may be just able to pull off a magnificent overtake and one that could end up in the Hall of Fame. Get it wrong, however, and well, you've got one or two options. Sit back behind your rival and follow them all the way to the pit stops and try and beat them on strategy, or with 30, find your way to the grass and we're potentially the barriers that are never too far away. Who exactly is going to see victory go too far away today, and who is going to be able to land themselves on the top step of the podium? Well, that's what we're here to find out, as we bring you all the racing action as if it were live. Indeed, you're watching this post-round broadcast and you're catching up with all the racing action for round number 5, which took place on Sunday, the 3rd of May, 2026. But we're bringing it to you as if it were live this Monday, the 4th of May, and May the 4th be with you. As always, that does mean that the race itself is not live, and therefore in the content booth, we do not know what happens, whether it be in the qualifying session that's currently ongoing in the background, nor most importantly, the upcoming race, and it is as close as possible to the raw live viewing experience for you guys and girls tuning in at home. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this post-round broadcast from circuit side as you catch all the racing action today, indeed every week from this series, and the only place you can do so, and there's on youtube.com, and search for SimRacing International, SRI, and you can be tuning in there. In the content booth you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action as it unfolds, and without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring you up to speed with the story from round number 4 of the UKSimRacing Sunday Showdown Season 18, and exactly how that has changed the permutations of the championship standings. For as we can see, we last time on the 26th of April were in Japan for the Fuji International Speedway. Mixed conditions confronted us there, and with it mixed things up most certainly in some of the classes, but not quite all. Now started of course with the qualifying session, how the weather really played out. We saw the rain come just before qualifying and it stopped 12 minutes into qualifying, but enough water had fallen onto the circuit, which meant that qualifying was all about being out on wet tyres, but a circuit that was getting quicker and quicker over the remaining 80 minutes of the qualifying session. Lap times were tumbling, and with that, drivers were tumbling down the order and quickly jumping back up. But who exactly leapt their way all the way to the very top in qualifying? Well, it was none other than was a very impressive pole lap from our driver of Tom Cordy in the interclass, taking overall pole position, but only by 34 thousandths ahead of the pro pole sitter Nathan Anstis. However, when we did go racing, will be a very different story between the two of them and so many other drivers. Indeed, Nathan Anstis were going to take the overall and the pro win, his first of the season, and well, given his mastery of mixed conditions, he was no stranger to the change that confronted him, and by taking that class pole position initially and second place overall at almost 3/10 ahead of Carl Roy, we may have missed out just on the overall pole, and in a way you could say almost missed out right at the start of the race, given the fact that he lost the class lead on the open lap to Carl Roy. However, both Cordy and also Roy on lap number 2 made major errors which handed the overall lead and the pro lead to Nathan Anstis, and at that point onwards he just simply opened up the lead little by little, gapped his rivals, pitted for slicks midway through the race, and never looked back, taking his first win of the season by 9.1 seconds as Carl Roy tried to chase after him but ran out of time. Meanwhile, in the interclass, well, many would say on paper at least it was going to be a day which Tom Cordy would be able to celebrate, but it was not a celebration for him, unfortunately, because it all went very wrong earlier in the race, as we mentioned only moments ago. But instead, it was Mikey Stewart and took his third win of the season, and well, he seemed to struggle in qualifying putting a lap together, taking 5th place in class and 15th overall, and he was the entire 1 second off of the class pole time. But in the race, it was an incredible opening couple of laps for him, jumping all the way up to 3rd in class and 6th overall, and he was tucked in very closely behind Hayden Young and leader Tom Cordy. But it was the major error for what was Tom Cordy which handed over the 2nd place to him, and it would take all the way to the pit stops for Mikey Stewart to be able to jump Young, and in the end, by pitting earlier for slicks compared to Young, he was able to pump out some brilliant brilliant laps, and he overhauled a 13-second time deficit to Young in the pit stops, and that's how he was able to take the lead and run away with it for the class win. Meanwhile, in the club class, well, it was an incredible day for Jordan Maymar, taking pole position in qualifying class by half a second ahead of Max Galgay. When the race, he was gradually reeled in by Galgay, Martin Kenyon and Tom Wheeler in the first stint, because he was busy prioritising his consistency and also making sure he steered clear of the fighting with pro and inter drives around him. And it really was a jumble of the three classes on the grid, which you would expect in mixed conditions qualifying sessions. But the fighting between the trio behind him for second through to fourth gave him a bit of a lifeline, plus also their entanglement with the other classes drivers as well meant that he felt quite comfortable, and this continued all the way through to the very end of the race, and it was a brilliant driven first win of the season for Jordan Maymar, and a special one for him because it was his first ever SRI racing career win, and also his first win in a league race in 3 years of league racing. Indeed, the team were absolutely celebrating ecstatically for Simcast Racing UK, and well, for Jordan Maymar, he really was their hero of the day. But now we are here in the United Kingdom for the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. It is, of course, the 3rd of May when the race had occurred, and we have got brilliant bright skies ahead of us, much like, hopefully, what would have happened in the GT World Challenge Europe, although I do believe a little bit of rain did interfere over the course of the weekend. And after this round, of course, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to Belgium, and it will be for everybody's second favourite Belgian circuit, Circuit Zolder, on the 10th of May. We'll see the story continue there. But that's in the future. Let's talk about now, and as we come into this round, how exactly does the standing stand after 4 rounds of racing? We begin with the Pro Drivers' Championship, and what we can see is that Fotis Katios has moved into lead by 2 points over Thomas Noakes. However, for Fotis Katios, normally the split track esports driver goes very well in mixed conditions. It was a very disappointing end to the qualifying session for him, only able to take 7th in class. But he did have an opening lap, or an opening 3 laps, we should say, that were absolutely rapid and leapt him all the way up into 3rd. But why didn't he take the win then? Many will be asking, why could he not become a 2-time winner? Well, it was because he had to constantly balance fighting with Hayden Young in the interclass, but also keeping Anton Kilo behind him, plus also Thomas Noakes, who started to saddle up behind him, and it was all about the battling, which really cost Katios the ability to move forward, but it provided us with plenty of entertainment as he tried to keep the MK SimSport pair behind. However, in the end, he did find that Noakes was able to get past him just before the pit stops, and it became a fight for 4th place with Anton Kilo, but then it was difficulty for Thomas Noakes right towards the end of the race, and that suddenly promoted Katios back up into 3rd place, and he was able to hold on to the very end, even when he did see Thomas Pugh also get involved versus Kilo and himself. And also Noakes right in the back of that battle as well. He was absolutely fiery hot as he chased after the ball come the very end of the race. Speaking of Thomas Noakes then, he sits now in 2nd place, loses the lead for the first time this season. Indeed, he's had quite mixed fortunes over the last couple of rounds, and he needs to get back on top of things. Because if Magello in round number 3 was an exhibition of how to lose the lead and throw away a potential win on the opening lap with an error, well, at Fuji, it was a demonstration of how exactly you can lose a podium opportunity by making multiple instances or mistakes occur. Now, that's not to point the finger at Thomas Noakes, to be fair. That phrasing does insinuate that he may have caused an incident. Towards the end of the race, he was involved in an incident, not necessarily his fault. And meanwhile, early on in the race, he also had a bit of a spin. And as a result, those 2 major moments cost the MK SimSport driver the opportunity to finish on the podium, and that 6th place instead means it is fallen to 2nd place, and expecting to try and come back as strong as humanly possible today. Carl Roy sits in 3rd place at Axis SimSports with SimWorks, and was 2nd place last time out, and after the disaster that he had at Spa-Francorchamps in the wet conditions there, with what was that 6th place finish and a DNF the round afterwards, well, it was for him a much happier day in the wet at Fuji, and he was able to bring home another podium, his 2nd podium of the season, his best result so far of this season, and we couldn't quite hunt down Nathan Anstis over the distance, but he definitely was 2nd best to him. Harvey Wheeler sits in 4th for a Verso Rapid, and proceedings right now not quite swinging his way after an 11th place finish last time out, completely contradicting the 2 2nd place he's had, and also the non-finish in there, but he is still 4 points ahead of Thomas Pugh for Axis SimSports Sim Coach, another top 5 last time out, but itching for another podium finish. Can he perhaps do so today? Max Wheeler is then the best part of 12 points further behind for a Verso Rapid with Fast, and right now he's looking very quick out there, it must be said, so much so that I've conglomerated the 2 team names together in retrospect. But he's on that 7th place finish last time out, 194 points, and can we see Max potentially move his way into top 5 today? Because if not, he's got the growing pressure of Nathan Anstis behind. First win on the board now for the UKSimRacing Hamilton driver, and we're expecting dry conditions today, but his Porsche will go very quickly at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, and we look forward to seeing whether he can make that all work out the way he wants it to. Casper Brotner sits in 8th meanwhile for Old Dudes in Cars, and the Dane right now, well, definitely it was a difficult day to explain for him at Fuji. Things just did not work out, although he did pick up a top 10, but I think he was hoping for a lot more, but unfortunately didn't quite click together. He's ahead of Matthew Croft by only 2 points, and Croft at Axis SimSports having a very difficult day, and well, unfortunately for him, finishing at 13th place, and right now he's got to try and arrest the form because he's had 2 top 5s and now 13th. He wants to be back in those top 5s, if not in a podium hunt. Archie Williams completes the top 10, a further 4 points behind for Axis and Sport with SimWorks. And then we do have Tim Probert, the Send It Racing driver, who definitely had to send it several times at Fuji when things went wrong, but he tried to make things right, and he gave us plenty of entertainment in his McLaren. And he's ahead of Darren Sharp, who's well the best part of 40 points, who completes the top 12 in Pro. We then come to the Interclass. And here we can see that Mikey Stewart, 3 wins now. And forget the 11th place, because we do have drop scores counting from this point onwards. So therefore, on a perfect 300 points so far in terms of the points that count. And the Axis Sports with SimCoach driver is definitely showing everyone how it's done as he tries to break away at the very top. Now, understandably, the problem will be that Hayden Young is looking increasingly quick. 2 thirds and a second have been his recent form on 250 points. And well, for Young, it wasn't quite the win for him, but he was the second best throughout the entire day at Fuji. Whether he was second best to what's Tom Cordy in qualifying in the Interclass, and he was second best to Stewart in the race. However, he'll feel as though right now he's also second in the championship, but he doesn't want to be Mr. Second Best for too much longer for Send It Racing. But he did find himself getting entangled in battling with pro drivers over the majority of the distance, and that seemed to be what held him back. Tom Cordy, meanwhile, the Phoenix Racing driver, sits in third, and that late retirement from Fuji definitely cost him very dear. A very frustrating day and a very disastrous day for him and the Phoenix Racing Red team, and he's got to look to bounce back today, because he definitely was the most impressive driver in the wet conditions, and he seemed to have the pace to potentially win the race, but of course the early instant cost him the chance to lead, and a subsequent instant further on in the race saw him have to retire. So expect him to look to bounce back today. He is the best part of 22 points ahead of Brandon Vincent Squibb, who wasn't on the grid last time out for Type 2 racing, so therefore taking a bit of a breather. We hope to see him back today and firing on all cylinders. And the answer to that question is, in fact, no, he's not here today, and therefore it does mean now he'll have a 0 score from Fuji, which he'll drop, and he will also be dropping what will be a score from this round at Brands Hatch. Well, he won't be dropping it, in fact, he'll just go as a 0. Jake Muttitt, meanwhile, sits in 5th place for Phoenix Racing Blue. He's continued to show what is some very highly consistent performances so far, although moving forward, his best result of the season last time out was 6th place. Can he break into the top 5 today in terms of his finishing positions? Because he does round out the top 5 so far. He's 6 points ahead of Hendrik Zilka. And the Swiss driver right now for Old Dudes in Cars will definitely, after the second place in round number 3, that 10th place last time out, not what he expected, and therefore he's got to try and resuscitate his pace very quickly. Meanwhile, Jack Barker, the other end of the spectrum, after 2 difficult rounds in rounds 2 and 3, finally getting the first podium on the board for Made for Racing. He looked very happy when he got out of the car from his Aston Martin that he's definitely fallen in love with after each and every race. Meanwhile, he's ahead of Eduardo Royes, who's 20 points behind, but remember, a non-finish for him in the last round he competed in, and he wasn't on the grid at Fuji. Well, he was the hero in the wet circuit to Spa-Francorchamps, and will that win now, he'll be hoping to make it another win at some point in the near future for Axis Sports with Ashley Brooks Designs. And then do have Andre Montine, the Axis Sports Smurf striker, in 9th place at 126 points, only behind Roy's based on the result countback, and then say further 24 points to Daniel Pays, the Portuguese driver who completes the top 10, with Austin Graff and John Harley completing the standings there, but they're all equal points to Pays, but they're behind him based on result countback. We then do come to the club standings, and here we can see in the club class, it's Martin Kenyon who leads the way for Pistech Racing, and well, his runner wins has come to halt after that second place finish at Fuji, but to be fair, it'd be unfair to say that second place was not hard earned, because he had to dig very deep for it, and in the end went toe to toe with Tom Wheeler over the entirety of the second stint, as Matt Skelgate gave up second place due to an incident, and it was Martin Kenyon who was able to come out on top versus Wheeler, but they went the full distance, and Wheeler thought he got it done until a late error going into the turn 6 hairpin on the final lap saw him go deep, and enabled Martin Kenyon to slice his way out the inside and make the move happen. So Kenyon was able to get clear, and then we do see Grant Miller, meanwhile, well, he's right now trying to make sure that Kenyon's not clear for too long, as the Phoenix Racing Red driver wasn't on the grid last time out, but is back today, and hopefully looking to try and chase down another podium. Alexander Wingmark, the Beta Frost driver, with second place in the wet at Spa-Francorchamps. He couldn't quite echo it at Fuji, in the end taking a 6th place, but still a reliable finish, no doubt about it. He did make a few mistakes, but also he was one of the drivers who went the longest on the wet tyre before pitting for slicks, and that actually worked out quite a treat for him, because he was able to get the most out of the wet compound, whereas a lot of drivers seem to struggle initially when they did transition to slicks in the club class. So he went for the Plan B strategy, and Plan B seemed to work out very nicely. And Stephen Wilkinson, meanwhile, well, he didn't need to use a Plan B last time out, because he made his way all the way up to the 5th place finish. Indeed, right now, 2 top 5s, a 3rd place and an 11th. We'll discount the 11th place, and Stephen Wilkinson, I think, surpassed his own expectations and is continuing to impress everyone for Simcast Racing Team. We then do have Tom Wheeler, currently the best part of 6 points behind. His first podium on the board last time out, but it wasn't the second place he was hoping for, and the Aversa Rapid Drive will know that he's got to try and iron out the mistakes, but he definitely enjoyed himself battling with Martin Kenyon every step of the way. Matthew Massey sits in 6th place for what will be the Spectre of Racing Team, 198 points, and it was a frustrating day in the office last time out for him, but not quite so compared to some of his teammates who will come to shortly, because before we get to them, we do come to the maiden winner in the class last time out, Jordan Maymar, who sits in 7th place, and with those 100 points moves up to 178 and propels himself into 7th. He is ahead of Jordan Butler, and a bit of a frustrating day for him as well. That 4th place, you would think on paper, his best result of the season, he would have been ecstatic about it. Well, some would say yes, others would say that he had the pace for a podium, but unfortunately couldn't quite get it together, whereas Kenyon and Wheeler could. But still, the Spectre Racing driver is just ahead of his teammate of Ryan Clark at the moment. The gap between the two of them, 14 points there, as Clark definitely had a bit of a dismal day in the wet conditions, taking the 12th place finish. And then we do have David Young completing the top 10 there for Logistical Nightmare Race in the privateer. He's 4 points behind Clark, but he is in turn the best part there, always 18 points ahead of David Pilcher. And right now, the Simcast Racing Team UK driver keeping a consistent run of top 10s, but he'd ideally like his first top 5 when he can. And James Connie completes the top 12 of the club class, 6 points behind. And in the team's championship standings, here we can see it's Axis Sports with SimCoach. They lead the way, having moved from second to first, taking the lead with their Inter win for Stuart and the 5th place in Pro for Pew. And Phoenix Racing Red. Well, no points scored at Fuji, given the absence of Grant Miller and Tom Cordy having that late retirement. So therefore, right now, they fall back to second place, but expect them to try and bounce back today. Averso Rapid by Freewheeler Racing, they sit in third on 416 points. They're 16 points ahead of Send It Race, and the battle between those two teams goes back and forth, and both teams are moving their way forward in the standings. And Axis Sports with Simworks, they've gone all the way from 8th to 5th, and a very happy day for them, because whilst it was unfortunate for Archie Williams not to take a better result, given the amount of fight he had to put on, Carl Roy's second place in Pro at Fuji has definitely helped them out considerably. From 368 points for 5th place, we then do come to 348 for Piztech Racing. They've fallen for 3rd to 6th, and whilst Kenyon was able to secure that podium in the club class, it was a nightmare day for Jonathan Slade, his teammate by comparison, and in the end not really able to bring it home too many points. But they're still ahead of Simcast Racing UK by 6 points there, with Stephen Wilkinson and Jordan Maymar proving to be a formidable combination, moving from 9th to 7th. And then we do have Spectre Racing ahead of Split Track Esports, only 2 points separated the two teams there, and well, both teams have slipped down the order with difficult days. And then we do see MK Simsport moving from 11th to 10th, finally get themselves back into the top 10, but they do need notes to start scoring consistently again to accompany Kilo's rather consistent performances. And then we do have Beta Frost just outside the top 10. They're currently on what is the best part of 44 points adrift from the top 10, and therefore we are starting to see a split between our top 10 teams and the rest of the field. But will it stay that way, or will we see some of our teams outside the top 10 break the way back in today? Well, that and plenty more we're about to find out. Because, of course, we are today going racing at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, located near the village of West Kingsdown in the county of Kent, in England, the United Kingdom. Length of the circuit, 2.3 miles, or 3.7 kilometres, depending on your preference of units, but what never changes is the number of corners, 9 of them in total. And a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely brilliant track maps contained within it. And we see all fast-flowing corners here. All of these corners, household names for those who live in the United Kingdom, but even abroad. And whilst we will be referring to them on this diagram as turns 1 through to 9, I'll be definitely giving an overview of all the names of each and every corner when we do get some onboard laps to our drivers. And plenty of elevation change around here. And of course, a two-dimensional image doesn't quite show it compared to an onboard. So therefore, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's not waste time waxing lyrical about a diagram. Let's give you a practical demonstration as we make our way back to circuit side. And as we do with the best part of around about 14 minutes of qualifying left, remember there is some overtime available. All of our drivers right now making their way on around and looking to go quicker and quicker. We do have a grand total of 38 drivers in attendance here today in the Garden of England, which is the nickname for the county of Kent. And as we do see where some of our drivers making their way around, including Adam Watson, currently the fastest driver out there for Altitude 3M Esports, both pro and overall. Well, who exactly is looking just as quick as him? Well, Thomas Noakes is definitely looking quick. And right now, Noakes only 37 thousandths off of your pole sitter. Brutal pole sitter that is, of course, and this Ferrari 296 is definitely a very quick car around the Brands Hatch circuit. But indeed, mid-engine rear-wheel drive, those cars are typically going to be the quickest around here because this is a quarter-inch circuit. You don't have too many long straights, and therefore you can't exactly get the power down in the likes of the Mercedes AMG, nor what is the BMW M4. But before we come to a BMW, we do look to Kyle Roy, who's currently the third fastest of all your pro and overall category drivers. And right now, looking good out there as his livery shines high. And what we do know, Roy has shown some very impressive performances at Brands Hatch in previous seasons. This is one of those circuits he goes very well at. And well, right now, the Scottish driver here using all the road and plenty more. And that's what you definitely got to do, but not if you lose the rear coming there through Sterling's Bend at turn number 8. And well, easy to lose the rear, no doubt about it. And I suspect Madge has taken a little bit of grass on that rear right tyre on turning, and it's just upset the rear balance of the car. And then subsequently, as he's gone through the apex and coming down the gearbox, the rear of the car is completely lifted up and let go. But he'll learn from that quite quickly as he makes way back up to speed. But of course, he'll now need to get those tyres slightly cooled down. But speaking of a BMW, Mikey Stewart is currently the fastest of your Inter drivers. front engine rear wheel drive, of course, but the thing about this BMW, it is very aggressive in its rear end. The M4 Evo edition, which was introduced to the racing world as of late 2025 and really making it staple in 2026. Mostly aerodynamic refinements compared to the baseline edition, which came out in 2022, and of course replacing that of the old BMW M6, going from the V8 with the twin turbo system, the 4.4 litre V8, all the way now to what is a more generous in terms of efficiency 6 litre, or in fact not 6 litre, my apologies, I'm getting a bit on top of myself there. I've got my brain in the world of Aston Martin. You have got essentially what is I believe, a 3.8 litre 6-cylinder engine. Oh my goodness, and that is going so as ever Mikey Stewart, and immediately pinging David Pilcher, and well, definitely there for David. That's going to be a big scary moment, and well, so much so it's made all my words tumble out my mouth and fall onto the table. But that was a big scare, and hopefully both drivers are okay with that. But that's not what you want to have happen at qualifying whatsoever. And well, Graham Hill Ben definitely catching up both drivers there, but it can happen. That's the thing about the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. It is a very narrow circuit, and when drivers do get it wrong, you've got to be ready for what is big instance. And well, the UKSimRacing Sunday Showdown is no stranger to Brands Hatch and big instance indeed. Only a couple of seasons ago, the last time we visited this circuit, I do believe back in, I want to say, season 15, there was a major incident making a way up towards Druids Bend on the open lap in the race, which did see the field essentially split in half. I believe at the time we had 50 drivers in attendance, and well, let's just say those from 12th place downwards, they essentially found themselves in one of the world's biggest traffic jams, which, to be fair, it was giving competition to the M25, the motorway, which runs just slightly northwards of this circuit, about 5 miles northwards, which is known for massive traffic jams during rush hour. The fact that you can have the best part of a 15 to 20 mile tailback, and well, the instant was good enough to compete with that. In the end, it did see a massive split in the field, and well, given there was no safety car or anything like that, it did mean that your top 12 in the end really had a race whereby they had no competition for the rest of the field behind, and it was about essentially the lead group and then everybody else trying to make sure they didn't fall a lap down in the race. Hopefully we don't see anything like that today. I've got my fingers and toes crossed that we do have a clean run through turns 1 and 2. Not to say our drivers can't do it, of course, but when you do have a very narrow circuit, one small mistake from one driver, and well, you get the picture, it's going to be a big domino effect, and it can suddenly all go very wrong. But right now, it's definitely not looking all going wrong here for Ashley Brooks, as the AB Designs driver makes his way on down towards what's Pilgrim's Drop and then upwards toward Hawthorne's Bend at turn number 5, as he does so in his McLaren 720S Evo, where he's currently the second fastest year into drivers and 10th fastest overall. Hayden Young, or the man who currently sits in second in the Inter Championship, he's currently in the pit lane, parked up there, although you won't quite see the car because it's hidden behind Martin Kenyon's Lamborghini, but the Send It racing car is there, the Porsche. He's currently the third fastest in Inter in 12th, and then Grant Miller right now looking to be the quickest out there in the club class. Well, it's a happy hunting ground for Grant Miller. He's gone strongly at Brands Hatch in the past. He's got the right car and he's got the attitude for it. Could this be the day where he finally takes that first win, as he gets a bit adventurous there into turn 1, or Paddock Hill Bend as it's known, taking a little bit of the runoff there on the left hand side and the small sliver of grass with it. And of course the thing is, you want to widen these corners as much as possible, both on entry and exit, but there's getting greedy and then there's going a bit too far and taking the grass with you, and that's one thing that Miller will need to be careful of. Indeed, all these drivers will, because the more they push the track limit, the more the limits will come back to bite them. Jordan Maymar's currently the second fastest in the club class, down in 17th place, the best part of what is a 10th of Grant Miller's provisional pole time. Then we do have Martin Kenyon currently the third fastest in his Lamborghini. Now, what's very interesting, the Thursday GT3 Championship, hosted by SimRacing International, because of course we do run the same schedule for both series, so you can use the Thursday as a bit of a benchmark in terms of what we can expect on the Sundays, and some drivers do like to say, because they compete in both, I use Thursday to practice for the Sundays. We did see the Lamborghinis really struggle over the race distance on the Thursday, whereby they were very quick cars over a single lap, and perhaps even over the opening half of the 1 hour race, but then towards the end of the race, tyre life went significantly against them. And I wonder if Martin Kenyon's perhaps worried about that, if he's been doing his studying, but to be fair, we know he does protect his tyres quite well, so perhaps he'll be able to get away with it. Now, as we look to Jason Brennan making his way around, we do have a couple of penalties here today that will be served. Jason Brennan in the club class will be 1 or 2 drives with penalties in the Spectra Sim Racing machine, and well, it's also sponsored by SimWorks Station, you can see across the window banner, and he does have a pair of drive-throughs that he picked up from round number 3, and he did not attend round number 4 at Fuji last time out, so it means he will need to serve one of the drive-throughs today. He cannot serve both, he's only allowed to serve one of them, and those drive-through penalties must be served by the end of the race, but not before the race gets underway. So in layman's terms, he can't do it on the formation lap before we go green flag racing. He must serve the drive-through penalty either at the start of the race, at the end of lap number 1, and he can serve it all the way through to what is the end of the penultimate lap. He can't take it on the final lap, of course, because otherwise he won't serve the full drive-through penalty, and indeed he'd be using the Michael Schumacher trick. Many of you will know that, of course, from Formula 1, and that's why the FIA did have to introduce a rule with regards to drive-through penalties, saying they cannot be served on the final lap of the race, because at the time there's nothing in the rule book. Ferrari found that, Schumacher found that, and he simply went, well, I'll just serve it on the final lap then, and I'll cross the finish line in the pit lane, so I'm technically taking a drive-through penalty as I drive my way through the pits to finish the race as well. Indeed, the saying goes that if the rules can be bent, they will, but you never want to break the rules. But to be fair, Brennan knows exactly what the rules are, and the same applies to Tom Cordy, who does have a drive-through penalty in the interclass. And well, both drivers here today, of course, and Cordy right now making his way around. There he is, the man who had the dismal day at Fuji, and well, 6.5 minutes to go right now. He'll know wherever he qualifies, he's going to fall down the order. But when do you take the penalty? Well, at Brands Hatch, you take it towards the very end of the race. You do not take it early on, unless you've qualified right down towards the back of the field, and therefore you've got the confidence to think you can take it and then catch up. The reason for it being, as you can see here, and we've already talked about it a few times, the narrow width of the circuit means that overtaking opportunities around here are going to be severely restricted. So the idea is, if you qualify quite well, such as what Cordy is doing here, currently the 5th fastest in the interclass, you do not want to give up track position wherever possible, unless you're right towards the back, and then you don't have to worry, you have clear air in front of you, which can be a big benefit. And that's where you're going to see, strategy-wise, we're going to see a very interesting split in strategies today. You're going to see a lot of drivers just simply stay out as long as possible, but there will be some who will gamble with the undercut. And if you can get the undercut right, we have been told by several drivers that nobody ever really wants to do the undercut in GT3s, because these cars, the lighter they are, and it's naturally to be expected, the less fuel they have in them, the quicker they are. But really, at the moment, the way these GT3s are modelled, the overcut strategy is the optimum strategy. But here at Brands Hatch, it can be very different. The undercut can be extremely powerful. So long as you find about 3 or 4 laps in clear air, you can suddenly gain a lot of time over your rivals. But speaking of time, it's time we brought you an onboard lap, and to do so, we're going to jump on board with Hayden Young as he takes us around. So into Paddock Hill Bend he goes, braking there about 80 metres from corner apex, down the gearbox to 3rd gear. Now on the throttle as he clears the crest, and then up the hill in towards Druids Bend at the hairpin. Braking at the 50 board, all the way down the gearbox here, pointing the nose in, staying in 2nd gear as he gets the throttle fed in, and now makes his way out of the hairpin and downhill in towards Graham Hill Bend. Braking 100 metres from corner apex, downhill braking zone there, you've got to brake a little bit earlier, and now making his way onwards. But in fact, as he weaves from side to side here, well, this is going to be a bit of a warm-up lap instead. So he brakes his way into 30s, braking at the 50 board, but that's effectively 125 metres from the corner apex, and now making his way down through Pilgrim's Drop, the long back stretch here that takes him onto the Grand Prix loop, and getting ready for Hawthorne's Bend, but decides to back out, so we're going to back out of riding on board with that lap for Young. He's not too happy about it, he's going to give it another go, as Jason Brennan goes onto the time tower, 31st at 26.334, and well, good lap from him. We saw plenty of laps to come from drivers, including none other than Fotis Katios, who right now in his Corvette Z06 GT3 R C8 Stingray, going through 30s, and you can see that the road off to the right would be the Indy Loop circuit, the shorter circuit that's most commonly associated with club and national level racing, whereas the Grand Prix that used for what's international level racing, and also is used on a limited basis, on an annual basis, for what would be both track days and also for what is national events. Indeed, there's an agreement between Brands Hatch and the local village of West Kingsdown, and the circuit existed before the village, but the village got the upper hand in the end, which is whereby only a maximum of 11 events can be run on the Grand Prix Loop each and every year due to noise pollution concerns, and that does mean that it's very rare the Grand Prix Loop gets used for events, but when it does, everyone immediately comes to it. And I do believe this weekend just gone, we saw 23,500 spectators descend on the Brands Hatch circuit for the GT World Challenge Europe Sprint Series opener. But as Fotis Katios gets himself back together, as does Darren Giacovelli, well, both these drivers going back onto another flying lap, and in fact we're going to jump on board with Casper Rotner as he takes us around. It's going in towards turn 1 is Mercedes AMG Evo, and 3rd gear there, airy steps away through Paddock Hill Bend and up the hill in towards Druids. Now on to the brakes he'll go, they're braking about 65 metres from corner apex, bit of a heavier front end on the car, he's got to get stopped, and then make his way out to Druids. Lovely line there as he heads in towards Graham Hill, bring the car to the right, on the brakes as late as humanly possible, get that late apex lined up, and then full throttle, so long as you keep 2 wheels on the white lines, you're fine. Now braking into 30s here, braking at the 50 board, but as we said earlier on, this caught out a very late apex, and when he hands follow Giacovelli on around, getting a bit close here to Giacovelli, but he's going to pick up a toe here as he now makes his way down through the Pilgrim's Drop, and we're going to stay very close here, but I get the feeling he's going to be held up here. He's going to look to the inside, however, and that's into Hawthorns he goes, compromise line, but he breaks there from 100 metres from quarter apex, just about gets it through, and now going into Westfield Bend at turn number 6, through the right-hander he goes, and when doing so now coming down through Dingledale and up in towards Sheen. This is the most trickiest corner of the circuit. It's blind. You cannot see the corner you're braking for. You have to have the faith. Braking 100 metres to the corner apex. Now over to the right-hand side. Use the Marshall's post for Sterling's Bend at turn number 8. Through the left-hander he goes. A little bit late on the throttle engagement there. Carrying a bit too much speed into the corner. And now in towards Clearways. Brake at the 50-metre board. Making sure to use the runoff area in this left-hand side as his brake marker. And now to the bend in third gear. Smooth lap. Unfortunately compromised by catching Darian Giacovelli too quickly. But still for Casper Rotner knows there's more time out there. And again, that's not Giacovelli's fault. It's just one of those coincidences. Both drivers there trying to go for a quicker lap as Adam Watson. Well, right now, he's been beaten to the post for what is that provisional pole at the moment. 5,000 separates him and Noakes, as unfortunately, it's going to be Watson who catches up to the back of Giacovelli, but Giacovelli sees it coming and lets him go there. So I think Giacovelli decided to use a cool-down lap. He's going to have one more opportunity here to try and go for pole position in the club class. Here's Giacovelli, as Watson, meanwhile, is going to give this lap and his final lap a go. But Thomas Noakes is going even quicker as he crosses the line. However, does not improve on the final sector nor the first sector, but his middle sector, what is effectively the Grand Prix loop, is looking incredibly quick for the Ferrari driver right now. So there's more time out there. We've got more lap times coming in. We've got no lap set by at the moment by Daniel Paisley, David Young or Matthew Massey. So a few drivers opt in not to take part in this qualifying session, and in doing so, well, they'll be starting from the very back of the field. But in terms of anybody else who's improving out there, well, Mikey Stewart right now still holding on to the inter-provisional pole position, and that is a very impressive lap there at the moment of a 21.353, and the target times from a lot of drivers were 21s, but if you can get into the 21s, you're doing very well. If you can get into the 20s, well, you're definitely a pro driver out there, and you are really pushing the envelope. But speaking of pushed envelopes, Adam Watson's missing the front bumper. Well, I don't know how that's happened, but he's lost it entirely, and meanwhile, as drivers come on through, well, he won't be competing in this qualifying session any longer. Noakes makes his way on around, but Fotis Katios right now has got one more lap to try and move his way out the order. He's currently 32nd, and here he goes as we ride on board with him going into Paddock Hill Bend. Now fighting with the car a little bit there, a bit sensitive, it's twitching on entry, and now breaking his way in towards Druids here. Is there something wrong with the car or the way they've set it up? Coming out to turn number 2, there's a lot of understeer then, Chaos runs wide, that is essentially going to invalidate the lap, I suspect, as he makes his way through Graham Hill Bend, and the rear of the car sliding away with the place like a snake, and right now Fotis Katios can't tame it down at all here, and well, this could be a very weak qualifying performance from him, and if so, this is not going to be happy whatsoever. Katios struggling, it would seem, as he makes his way all around, but right now trying to keep it together, and this lap is over the shop. It's almost as if somebody's put oil on his tyres. Going in towards Hawthorns Bend right now, just taking it nice and easy through there. But again, the rear of the car is coming around before he can get the front into the corner. It's almost as if he's got too much oversteer on entry and he's got too much understeer on exit. He hasn't found the Goldilocks zone for the car. Coming up for Dingledale into Sheen here, and well, constantly fighting with the car and the road surface. It's a bit of an unsettling car as he breaks way in towards Sterling's now. Better line through there. That's hooked up quite nicely. So we know medium speed with a bit of camber is all right, but it does seem to be low speed bends at the moment. The car just does not want to cooperate. But going through clearways there, goes in a bit deep, and he's going to carry a lot of speed in, but that will compromise his line on exit. So Katios comes towards the timeline right now. Well, I don't think he did invalidate the lap. He is going to improve. That lap does count. It moves him up to 28th place at 22.633, but into the barrier there, and I think that's what says everything about how Katios is feeling about his Corvette at the moment, his qualifying performance. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, qualifying is complete. And we do see Thomas Noakes has taken pole position today on a 20.912, 5 thousandths quicker than Adam Watson, with Kyle Wright and Thomas Pugh making up the second row behind, and the two of them separated by only 5 thousandths. It's the story of pairs separated by 5 thousandths at the moment, and then you do have a sizable gap between Tim Probert and what is Mikey Stewart, your Interpol sitter, who starts 6th place, practically a 10th behind the 5th place starter. But still, Stewart's going to be very happy because he was able to out-qualify his interpeers with Ashley Brooks next up on the block, and he was almost the best part of 3.5 tenths behind, but he'll be just ahead of Tom Cordy by 200ths, who starts 11th, and then you do have to go to 12th place just behind them to see your club pole sitter of Grant Miller, and he will take 12th with Jordan Maymart, the winner from last time out, 17th but second in club, and he was just ahead of Martin Kenyon, the championship leader, who'll be starting 3rd in class day, 19th overall. Well, that's definitely qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen, an intriguing qualifying session at that. And with some big surprises, but the biggest one of them all being Fortis Katios 28th, 13th in Pro Class. Not happy with that whatsoever. And well, we now have our 5-minute warm-up period, but understandably, I think a part of him's going to be thinking this has just not worked out at all, and he's got to find a way to go forward from there. But as the 5-minute warm-up stroke practice period gets underway, of course, this is a time, if you're currently sat there right now thinking to yourself that you may need to go for a bathroom break before the racing does get underway, go do it now. Or if you do need to go get yourself a top of a liquid refreshment, or go get yourself a top of a snack of your choice, whether it be popcorn, potato chips or crisps, well, definitely go do it, because the one thing about it is once the racing gets going, you will not want to miss a second of it. Because the thing about Brands Hatch, as we said earlier, overtaking is difficult around here, and it can feel a little bit processional, the racing at Brands Hatch. However, that is where the thrill is, because this is one of those circuits where you will see cars run nose to tail within literally a tenth to 3/10 of each other, lap after lap for the entirety of the lap, and at any moment the tiniest of mistakes can open an overtaking opportunity, but also it can really shake up things. And Sunny C and drivers are trying to push their way through the field, suddenly being relegated all the way down the order and then having to work out strategy to overcome what is the deficit. But looking to Harvey Wheeler, well, the 334 driver not really having too strong of a qualifying session either in his Aston Martin V8 Vantage Evo. And understandably, the Averso Rapid by three-wheeler racing driver will be probably thinking to himself right now, it's all to do in the race. But again, strategy can be absolutely pivotal to success. Given the fact we've got dry conditions here today, we are only expecting a splash and dash of fuel from our drivers, and perhaps a tyre or two being changed, depending on how long they're in the pit lane and how much they do feel the tyre wear is necessitating that tyre change. But the pit stops will be quick. And on top of that as well, you are looking at one of the shortest pit lanes in the world for international racing here. This is an FIA Grade 2 circuit. You're not allowed to race Formula 1 here in the modern era because of the fact there's not enough runoff areas. And to put it in context, this corner that Harvey Wheeler makes his through now, clearways the final quarter, if you were to race Formula 1 here, you would have to expand the runoff area or the gravel trap of the quarter, the best part of what would be 300 metres away from the circuit. And it would mean that the MSV offices, Motorsport Vision, the company owned by none other than Jonathan Palmer, who does own the majority of the circuits in the United Kingdom, with Brands Hatch being one of many of them, you would have to see those offices and the hospitality suites completely demolished and moved backwards to pretty much also the main road, the A20, which enables people to come and go from the Brands Hatch circuit. Such is the nature of those FIA Grade 1 runoff zones that are required for circuits such as this. Of course, they differ from circuit to circuit, all depend on the nature of the corners and also exactly how much speed drivers are carrying into said corners. And will Formula 1 understand with the quote-unquote pinnacle of what is open wheel racing, well, you're looking at some of the highest entry speeds there. Although, to be fair, these GT3s, they are no slouches. And in terms of what other international racing does occur here at the Brands Hatch circuit, as well as what is GT World Challenge, we also do see British GT occasionally take to the circuit, although it does more so focus perhaps on what's the likes of Donington Park and also Alton Park. Although you do have the British GT Cup, which is an offshoot series of it, which is a lot of older GT racing machines, old GT1 and GT3 cars. But also you do have the American Speed Fest that does take place at Brands Hatch on an annual basis, and there you will get to see the European NASCAR series, or Euro NASCAR, which does see equivalents to modern day American NASCARs race around here. And it really is big, bulky American V8 racing around the Indy circuit, not the Grand Prix Loop, although we'd love to see them race around the Grand Prix Loop at some point. I can tell you that. You never know. They may come to iRacing and we'll see that. But either way, definitely one of those circuits right now whereby you shouldn't judge a circuit by its looks. Like I say, don't judge a book by its cover. And this is one of those circuits that definitely will keep you surprised what exactly does race around here. But as we do see, Tom Wheeler following his teammate on the round, and that being his teammate of Harvey Wheeler in front. Of course, the club driver following the pro driver, with David Young right now, the logistical nightmare racing privateer. Well, again, having a qualifying session, qualifying towards the back end of the club class, but in his BMW M4, he's been one of those drivers who's very consistent normally and is all about the strategy. Something he's been very good at doing. He's had some standout performances in the last couple of seasons. He's been on the grid, and we look forward to seeing what he may be able to do in this one. But looking back to Tom Cordy, well, qualifying was decent for the Phoenix Racing Red driver, but he knows he cannot afford another day like Fuji. He needs to get this race on the board. He needs to get the points, so he's going to lose major ground. Remember, this season, the first 7 rounds, they are worth the normal points that we will see, whereby it is 100 for the win. And we're not 100 for the win. Yes, it is 100 for the win. I'm thinking I've got about 4 different point systems in my head, ladies and gentlemen. Now it's 100 for the win, but remember, when we do get to rounds 8, 9, and 10, the showdown rounds carry an extra 50% points. And therefore it does mean that suddenly that win becomes 150. So you want a very good baseline going into round number 8. And then that's where you need to absolutely min-max your point scores all the way through to the very end of the season. And Tom Cordy right now know that, like they all do. But we know one thing as well, is that with the clock heading towards zero very quickly, as we do look to Daniel Pays and his Porsche 911, made his way on around with the Porsche 992 GT3R as it's properly known. Well, it is time, ladies and gentlemen, to make our way to the grid, because it is time for 60 minutes of racing here at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. And who exactly is going to be coming up smelling the roses in the Garden of England, and who is going to be wilting by the wayside? Well, that and plenty more we're about to see here in round number 5 of the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship Season 18, brought to you on iRacing, hosted by SimRacing International. And so as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll all line up for the 5th round of the season. And it's Thomas Noakes who takes pole position for Pro and overall by MK Sim Sport, and he takes that pole by 5 thousandths ahead of Adam Watson. The Altitude 3M Esports driver in the end not quite able to pip into the post, but it was very close between the both of them over qualifying. Can we expect a drag race into turn 1? If so, who's going to get the upper hand over the race distance? Carl Roy starts third today for Axis Sim Sports with SimWorks, and he's got some hard work to do, has the Scotsman, ahead of Thomas Pugh. The two of them separated coincidentally by 5 thousandths. But the Axis Sim Sports with Sim Coach driver, we know that he's got some pressure behind. Tim Probed, not the quickest driver in qualifying, but starts 5th for Send It Racing and lives up to his team name. And can he make those places to get on the podium today? Mikey Stewart will be your interpole sitter, starting 6th for Axis Sim Sports with Sim Coach, looking to make it a 4th win out of 5 rounds, and we're starting off strong to be able to do so, with Harvey Wheeler starting 7th for Verso Rapid by Freewheeler Racing just behind. Then it's going to be Anton Kilo, the MK Sim Sport driver from Finland. He starts in 8th place today, not too far behind Wheeler, but in turn the best part of 1.3 tenths ahead of Max Wheeler, and the Wheelers coming out strong here today for the home circuit, and the Verso Fast by Freewheeler Racing driver knows he's got to go quick because Ashley Brooks is not too far behind. Second of the Inters, but round off the top 10 there for Axis Sim Sport Bandits. Now, can he make a steal? Because if not, Tom Cordy would love to for Phoenix Racing Red as the formation lap gets underway. He starts 11th ahead of your club pole sitter Grant Miller. His first time on pole position sometime for Phoenix Racing Red, and can he take that first win that's escaped him so far this season? But he missed Fuji, he's had an extra week's rest, and now he's got to get the job done today. He'll be ahead of Darren Sharple's Old Dudes and Cars Amnesia and Hendrik Silke, his teammate. They complete your 7th row tier, Pro and Inter drivers. Then we do have Hayden Young starting 5th in the Intercar today for Send It Racing. Not quite looking on pace in that Porsche, but definitely right now knowing he's got some work to do. But he can always make it work on strategy, perhaps. Old Dudes and Cars Vintage's Casper Brotner starts 16th ahead of Jordan Maymar for Simcast Racing UK. Starts 2nd in club today ahead of Jack Barker for Major Racing, right in the middle of the pack. Martin Kenyon for BizTech Racing, Championship leader in club, starts 19th, third of the class, head of Sight Anthony for UKSimRacing Hamilton. And then we do have starting 21st, it's Peter Holt for Send It Racing Bulls, head of Nathan Anstis, the winner overall and in Pro at Fuji. In dry conditions here today for the UKSimRacing Hamilton dry, he's got a bit of an uphill task at hand. Luke Sherlock starts day 23rd for Darkwing Racing, just ahead of Jordan Butler for Spectre Racing Feet Simworks. And then we do have Austin Graff for Axis Sim Sports by Amy Designs, 25th, head of Archie Williams. The Axis Sim Sports with Simworks driver, known he's not in the place he wanted to be in qualifying, he's got the work to do. David Pilch, meanwhile for Simcast Racing UK, he'll be happy with that 4th place in the club class in qualifying. That's a great start for him. Now can he convert it into a top 5 or perhaps even a podium? Fotis Catchills, the biggest surprise of all in qualifying, starts 28th for Split Track Esports. The Greek driver's got a lot of work ahead of him, with Ryan Clark starting in 29th for Spectre Racing, ahead of what is none other than Stephen Wilkinson, who completes your top 30 for Simcast Racing UK. 31st, it's going to be Tom Wheeler for Verso Rapid by Freewheeler Racing, ahead of James Conley for UKSimRacing Norris. And then we do have Darren Giacovelli, the privateer, just ahead of Jason Brenham for Spectre Racing Feet Simworks. And there'll be Daniel Pace, Old Dudes and Cars Vintage with no lap time set. Nor the same for David Young there, the privateer. And in the end, Matthew Massey starts 37th. But the field, it's almost back to us already, ladies and gentlemen. Martin King is up to the start from the pit lane. And I do wonder where he's missed the gridding procedure there. They've identified an issue for the car, whereas driver's choice. But as the formation lap continues to come towards its very end, we'll face some drivers here today, all itching to go racing. And Thomas Noakes right now brings them through the last couple of quarters. It is going to be through clearways. And will the way be clear for him today? Or will he find Adam Watson getting the upper hand? Well, that and more, we're about to find out, ladies and gentlemen, as Thomas Noakes takes us to the green for 60 minutes of racing. And it's lights out, away we go for our 5th round of the championships. They roar the way up towards turn 1, and as they do, our drivers right now all attacking hard, but Adam Watson can't get the run, and Carl Roy meanwhile on his inside as they make the way onwards. We look to the blimp camera as they head up the rise, in towards the tree line there. Oh, there's contact between Ashley Brooks, and well, those two cars are going to come together. They come across the road, and in the end, do they stay clear of the road? Does Druids in the end have another traffic jam at it for what is our most recent visit? And the answer is going to be yes, perhaps no, but in the end, everyone seems to have just about got through, apart from those calls caught up, including Tom Cordy. Also there, Martin Kenyon started from the pit lane. He's been able to steer clear of it. And Casper Rotner's been caught up. We'll get a replay of that shortly, but it's got a bit wrong for those drivers, but it has not been a complete stop to the racing, thankfully for that. And therefore, as the drivers make their way onwards, we can see Tim Probert there with Harvey Wheeler behind, and then Thomas Pugh and Max Wheeler going side by side already. And well, this is going to be Harvey Wheeler looking to go on the attack here. And well, is the answer going to work out? The answer is yes. The attack is Thomas Pugh. Oh, that's off the road. Oh my goodness! And that's going to be Adam Watson. That's Watson losing it at Hawthorns. He comes around and has collected Thomas Pugh's car. And Pugh's going to be absolutely fuming at that. So at 1 minute he's battling side by side, had nowhere to go. And in the end, I suspect that Watson had his brakes on, but unfortunately that car, with all the momentum it hit the Armco barrier with, it was going to ricochet as Hayden Young in the end goes a bit wide. He's up into ninth place. He's now second in the interclass. And for Hayden Young, he's actually had a brilliant opening lap. But meanwhile, at the front of the field, Thomas Noakes right now absolutely flying as he roars his way onto lap number 2. And the field is as follows, at least your top 10. It's Noakes, ahead of Roy, followed by Probert. That's your top 3. Then we do have Harvey Wheeler ahead of Max Wheeler, followed by Kilo in 6th. Then it's going to be Interleader Stewart in 7th, ahead of club leader Miller in 8th. Hayden Young completes the run to 9th place at the moment, second in class. And that's going to be an Inter ahead of Hendrik Zilk, who's had a brilliant start as well. He completes your top 10. And it's going to be Jordan Maymar completing the run to best rest in 11th there, second of your club drivers. Meanwhile, further back, you have to go back to 20th place of Jordan Butler. He's definitely had a smooth start for Spectre Racing Feet Sim Works, and therefore he's third in the club class right now. David Pilcher and Ryan Clark, they're fighting behind, and it's going to be Clark trying to go around the outside here as he makes way into Graham Hill Bend, taking the inside for Druids, and Pilcher's going to go very deep, and Clark gets that move done. Lovely move there for Ryan Clark, and now Pilcher's going to be on the back foot here because Tom Wheeler's got the momentum to look up the inside into Surtees, but does he have the brakes? You've got to trail very aggressively there on the outside line, the natural racing line, let alone the inside, and when the end, Tom Wheeler does sneak his way through, so lovely move there from Tom, and David Pilcher falls backwards, but to be fair to him, he's now got even more pressure going from Archie Williams, but I suspect he'll let Williams go here as a pro driver and let Williams become a bit of a nuisance to Wheeler instead. Does exactly that, and now they make the way on towards the Derek Minter straight. As they come down there and in towards Westfield Bend, well, meanwhile, James Connolly, he's had a decent start to this race, started all the way from 32nd up to 28th already, gaining 1 place in class as well on his journey, and he's on the back of David Young now as these drivers make the way on through, but right now, Young has definitely got some work to do. They both have here, although Young's gained more places, and he's had the better start, and that's the thing about David Young, he normally does have those sneaky starts where he's able to creep his way through. We have lost a few drivers to what happened on the start of the race, and we will get a replay of that shortly, as meanwhile, Tim Probert's still under pressure then from Harvey Wheeler. As we look back from the rear of the 312 Send It Racing McLaren, and that Aston Martin definitely looking close, but remember we do have the concertina effect here, which makes objects appear closer than they perhaps seem, or at least the gap between drivers look closer than they seem. And right now 2/10 of the delta between these two. It's been like that since the start of the lap, and Wilcarn still just in front of Probert by comparison. So no real change at the moment. It is a game of follow the leader, but they're all starting to lose a little bit of time to Noakes, who's trying to turn up the wick, although Noakes in front of him has got a Mercedes. That is the car of Thomas Pugh there that's come out the pit lane recently on a recovery. Oh, hold up a second. Is that Barker? That's Barker who's gone around at Surtees Bend. He's on the inside. He's got nowhere to go. He's going to exhibit patience, and that is a Corvette rejoining, I think. Unless I'm mistaken, there was a car rejoining. I couldn't quite tell you which one it was, but definitely I think that was Fotis Katios coming back on the road, although don't quote me on that. I don't think it was Katios, in fact, but somebody had gone very wide there, and I wonder if they were involved in the contact with Jack Barker, or whether Barker did that with his own volition. I think it might have been Austin Graff's car, actually, because that's missed the front bumper, and the Exorcism's what's AB Design's driver right now, where it's definitely going to be weight reduction on the car. That's also going to increase the aerodynamic drag coefficient on it as well. But as he makes his way up the hill, we can see David Young behind here, watching on, and right now definitely a bit of a twist in the tail there, and a bit unfortunate for Barker after his brilliance, of course, at Fuji. Well, here today things have not been brilliant so far, and then again he's got a long time left in this race. But back to the front of the field we go, and Thomas Noakes right now not actually bolting away anymore as Harvey Wheeler looks up the inside here, goes all in into Druids Bend versus Probert. He's going to get that move done. That's up in the third there for the Versa Rapid by Freewheeler Racing driver, but you'll notice there that Probert opting not to defend at all, letting it go. I think the game plan here is so long as they can all stay behind Roy Noakes, they don't mind what order they're in, they can save the fuel, they can save the tyres, and they can look better towards the end of the race. Indeed, every second saved in terms of fuel saving here, every thousandth of a second you save is going to make a huge difference in the pit lane. As we said earlier on, we have one of the shortest pit lanes here on the international stage, and it means the end-to-end pit time loss can be as short as effectively 30 seconds, whereas a lot of circuits it's a minute plus, which does mean for these drivers right now, you literally save half a second. That could be the difference between victory or losing and falling to second today. And indeed, whilst finishing second sounds great, for these drivers they only want one thing, and that is outright victory. But Hendrik Zilka, he's got Jordan Maymar close behind him as he tries to hunt down Hayden Young, and Maymar continues to follow, and Maymar's definitely had a great start to this race, the 130 driver, moving all the way up from 17th to 11th place, not gained any club places, but Grant Miller, he'll know it is only the best part of 2 seconds up the road, so let's give him confidence here that maybe he'll be able to get a bit closer later on in the race. But in 5 minutes this race complete, we've still got plenty to go. Well, right now it's not the battle of 2 Darkwing purple cars there, although you would be forgiven for mistaking them, because they are both running purple fronts. Well, that is going to be the Darkwing purple racing machine Luke Sherlock trying to keep Nathan Anstis at bay. Anstis in the Porsche looking around the outside. You can make a move all the way around the outside of Packard Hill Bend, but the problem is you can either go for the switchback, which is what Anstis tries to do there, or you go all the way around and I hope that your arrival on the inside does not elbow you out. And then again, it requires a lot of respect to be given there. And we do see Nathan Anstis in the Porsche. He gets the better run off the corners. But that Ford Mustang in has just got a little bit of legs on the straight, so that we do know the gearing of that Mustang is quite tall in what is second, third gear. So therefore, whilst it's got some decent acceleration, it's not that strong. Meanwhile, that's not a strong way to deliver Graham Hill Bend for Ryan Clark, as the Spectre Racing driver goes around on the outside, goes to the inside, and when he gets himself turned around, smooth moves there for the 139 driver, but unfortunately, he won't get any points for that. He'll lose the chance of points because he'll now drop down to 8th place in club. An easy mistake to make there, but good news for the British driver. He gets back on the road, and all you have is a little bit of a bruised ego and also some slightly warm tyres. But meanwhile, we come back to Hendrik Zilka, with Jordan Maymar chasing after him, and the old dudes in cars amnesia driver right now. Definitely not forgetting the fact he's caught between a rock and a hard place. He wants that second in Inter, but he's also got to make sure he doesn't lose overall position to the second place club driver, who otherwise will try and get between the two and could prove to be a little bit forward in the side. Fotis Katsios, meanwhile, when he started 28th, the Split Track Esports Corvette driver is already up into 19th. He's moved from 13th to 11th in Pro. His next target is Archie Williams. That'll be for 10th place in Pro if he's able to get the job done. It's not going to be easy. Well, one thing's for certain, as he sits behind right now, he's still got the work to do. But meanwhile, we've got some work to do in terms of taking a look back in time at some big moments that have happened as we go back in time, ladies and gentlemen, and look at the race start. Now, this is how we did go green flag racing for all the drivers, and as they made the way away, well, it's definitely a great start here, and Thomas Stokes really nailed that start compared to what's Adam Watson. Watson lost out by comparison. Does it all made the way up the hill and in towards Paddock Hill Bend? You can see Carl Roy trying to take a quick look up the inside. So where did it all go wrong as they made the way upwards? Well, it looked as though it all happened in the midfield, and well, there was the start of the instance. That was Tom Cordy and Ashley Brooks getting caught together, and that continued and collected was the car Casper Brockner. Now, can we see that from Tom Cordy's perspective? I think we can. This was Cordy then, right in the middle of the pack, making his way down the hill from Paddock Hill Bend. Ashley Brooks on the left of him, and in the end, ooh, goodness me. Well, in the end, it looks like the two intersect with each other, and both cars go very sideways there, but both able to stay to the outside. Now, this is what it looked like from Ashley Brooks' onboard perspective. And this was Brooks' banner at the time. He had Anton Kilo on front of him. But as he comes off the corner here, does he come over to the right slightly? A little bit. But again, I don't think it's anything egregious there. I think it's one of those natural two cars come together for the smallest of touches, and then it gets absolutely multiplied. Casper Brockner, meanwhile, he was right behind all of it. This is what it looked like for him. So he's going to see the instant plays out in front of him. And there it goes. But when does it come back to him? And there's the answer. A lot of drivers did get on their brakes immediately. Brockner had no time to. He was blindsided by the car to the right of him. And this was what happened to Peter Holt, as we did have somebody go charging into the back of what was their Casper Brockner's car. That was one of the SimCast Racing cars. Jack Barker immediately slammed on the brakes there, saw it was coming, and Holt in the end did very well to bring it over to the side. So well done to everyone for that. That was brilliant racing reactions there from them. This was Stephen Wilkinson, and I believe this is where Wilkinson did go into the back of a car. I think he did go into the back of Casper Brockner. So went onto the brakes. He was pushed on the back, in fact, and that's what sent him straight on. The cameras don't cut too well there, and I believe that was the car of Slight Anstey that propelled him forward. I believe we're going to get Slight Anstey's perspective as they made their way around. In fact, that was not Slight Anstey, that was James Conley. Let's correct ourselves there. But you could see the traffic jam build up, and everyone tapped at the back of the next car in the sequence. And in the end, James Conley, I think, just taps the rear of Wilkinson's car. We won't be able to get a replay of that. But what else did we have happen? Well, we had this was Stephen Wilkinson a little bit later on after it all went wrong. So he got the car turned around, but after he did, I think that car had to tow to the pit lane for damage, and Martin Kenyon, who had his pit lane start, came for the scene of the incident and went, what exactly happened here, guys? Meanwhile, Adam Watson, well, he was into the lead, in fact, so he had managed to squeeze his way ahead. We didn't quite catch that, but this was at Hawthorne's Bend. The car understeered wide, hit the barrier, and in the end, oh, goodness me, and that was a mistake of the road there from Thomas Pugh as well. So Pugh was not as innocent as perhaps we thought there, and that's not to blame. came in, let's be 100% clear. We thought he was on the road when that happened. He'd actually run a little bit wide himself, and unfortunately, Watson was trying to come back on, but the car proved a bit uncontrollable, and Pyrenean had gone wide, and unfortunately, it takes two to tango, and the two found each other in haste. This was Thomas Pugh's perspective and all that. And he was battling side by side at the time. Brilliant fight going on with the three-wheeler racing machine. Goes wide here, cold tires on the outside. He's understeered, and at that point, Watson comes back on. He's probably figured, Adam, please don't. Oh no, you've done so. And unfortunately, it's gone very well there, but hopefully both drivers okay and able to carry on. Although I do believe Pugh had to tow to the pit lane as a result of that contact. We had this on lap number 2 for Matthew Massey. This was Massey battling side by side with Darren Giacovelli. That got a little bit firm, and with Giacovelli on the inside and being turned around there in that contact, and was Massey, and in the end Giacovelli went round with him. So both of them there gave each other as good as they could give. I think both drivers there are going to be called to stewards room afterwards to say, it's lap number 2 guys, you may just need to calm it down. But both of them wanted to get moving, but then both of them I think pushing each other around a bit too much. Jack Barker meanwhile, this was on lap number 3, and this was coming in towards 30's bend. Oh, that was Watson diving up the inside, and in the end, oh, it all went round in front, and Barker in the end, in reaction, put the brakes on as the car was trying to turn him, probably dropped a gear very aggressively. Let's spin up the rear wheels, the car just completely let go. So that was for Barker, and this was Fotis Katios, but at the time did have Adam Watson trying to make his way up the inside. So Katios did go wide, and there was contact, there was slight anti as well. We thought there was a Corvette that went round, that was Katios, and then we were right the first time. So as he made his way back on here, taking the cone to win for good measure, and more frustrating moment for him, and Barker just taking the reactions there, and it all went very wrong. But with that, it's back to your live racing we go, ladies and gentlemen. So some very exciting moments at the very start of this race, no doubt about it. But of course, we come back to the race now with 6 minutes of race passing in the replays there. We've brought you up to speed with what's happened. But what's happened whilst we've been away? Well, Hendrik Zilka still has Jordan Maymar behind him. The top 3 of the interclass together now, although Mikey Stewart has bolted away at the stable a little bit. But still, all these drivers pushing on as much as humanly possible. But the old dudes in cars amnesia driver right now staying close to Young, and I think they'll try to work together as much as possible, and Maymar just with them. We do have a top 6 of pro drivers all clear. It does seem as though Mikey Stewart just running off into the distance, we should say, but falling off of the back of the pro leaders. But further on down the order, well, it's Maymar then who leads Club Cars. And in fact, we've had an incident for Grant Miller. That's what my brain is tingling at the fact right now. The Phoenix Racing Red driver, who was comfortably in the lead of the Club Cars, he's had a mistake somewhere. And, well, we can't unfortunately bring you a replay of it, ladies and gentlemen. But he's out of lead of the class right now behind Jordan Butler. I don't suspect he's pitted as of yet. That would be way too early to make a pit stop. And we are just trying to get a bit of information as to what exactly has happened to Grant. So that way we can fill you in with the missing picture. And the answer to that question is that there was a loss of control on lap number 8 for him. So he's had it off track, he's got off the road, he's had to rejoin, he's fallen down the order. So unfortunately, we won't get your replay of it, but we can tell you that's where Grant Miller has lost the lead of the club class through an error. Now, whether he was aided on that adventure or not, I suspect it might have been self-inflicted, given the fact we have no information to say he was in contact with another car. So that explains and fills us in as best it possibly can. As meanwhile, we do look a bit further down the order. David Young make his way onwards, chase after Martin Kenyon, but Kenyon's still on the progress through the field. Remember, of course, that Martin Kenyon did start from the pit lane, and right now the Pitstech Racing driver trying to carve his way upwards. To be fair, he's made some good progress so far into 6th in club, but now he's got the bigger gaps to close down. Of course, it gets harder the longer you go into the race, the further up the field you go, because naturally the gaps will get bigger, but also you're coming up against quicker and quicker drivers. Well, at least that's the theory, that, of course, towards the front of the field will be the quickest of the drivers, or the most consistent at least. And Martin Kenyon right now knows that every 10th he can gain on the likes of, say, David Young behind is going to feel like 800ths versus, say, David Pilcher onwards, such as how the margins will slender down. But as he makes his way onwards, the English driver right now on his home circuit for this season will definitely keep in the move on. And with that, we look forward to seeing how far he can go and whether he can break his way back onto the podium. From him, who else is looking impressive out there at the moment? Well, we do have a bit of a run here for Katios, and he tries to run away from sight Anti, who's following him all around. And Anti right now staying close, missed the front bumper after that instant we did see for him with Katios a bit earlier on at this very corner in the replay footage. And Grant Miller, meanwhile, has got Archie Williams right behind him. So I think the Phoenix Racing Red driver will not be too grateful here, but he has got the encroaching presence of a pro driver. He'd ideally like to keep the pressure on Butler, but I think he might have to think about plan B here, which is, does he let Butler through? We will see what he decides to do here, or whether Butler's going to be given a bit of a breathing room, and Williams, meanwhile, is going to have to just simply wait behind as well. It's not going to be easy. It's a rock and a hard place situation. from there, we look to Luke Sherlock. He's still got Nathan Anstis behind. Anstis right now cannot find a way through. He's been knocking on the door several times, but there's no response right now from the Darkwing Racing Purple driver, who's just making sure to stay very much ahead at the moment. But that's the thing, it is the game of follow the leader, and so long as you're following the car that you think you are saving the right amount of fuel off of, you'll be okay. But it's as soon as you start to feel as though you're being held up, that's the problem. As Grant Miller goes a bit deep into Paddock Hill, Ben collects that in the nick of time, and we're in the end a bit too much speed, but I think also some enthusiasm there to attack Jordan Butler. Goes wide, but not too much to lose the car, and just about keeps it together there. But once you do go wide at Paddock Hill, Ben, and you put the ABS on, saying the car's going to understeer even further, and pretty much that gravel trap will come up very quickly. And once you go into that gravel trap, it takes a very long time to come back. It's not that deep of one in terms of how far it runs away from the circuit, but it is one of those ones whereby you drive downhill into gravel and then you've got to drive uphill, which means you lose a lot of momentum. Essentially, you should be coming out that corner at the best part of heading up towards 100 miles an hour. You're going to be coming out that gravel trap at around 70, and you've got to do it on the outside on a grass patch, because of course there is no official runoff area there. You are rejoining onto the racing line. Right now, that fall behind us, we look to Hendrik Zilko, still chasing after Hayden Young, and Jordan Maymar is there. Well, thereabouts, but Maymar right now looking to potentially try and make it 2 wins in a row, and if so, if he can make it the double, I think the belief's going to start to grow for the Simcast Racing UK driver. And this could be the season whereby it's not just going to be his first wins in 3 years, but also could it be a maiden crown in the Sunday series? Well, there's a long way to go. This is just the end of the first half of the season come the end of today, and on top of that, remember, we do have the bonus points round at the end of the season, really taking a similar approach to the Bennett's British Superbikes as they were known in 2025, and a new sponsorship for this year. Either way, we're definitely mixing things up this season. Interested to see how the Showdown rounds put the pressure on drivers. Meanwhile, Fotis Cassius here, flashing his headlights, saying hello to Archie Williams. Indeed, there's so many different interpretations of the flashing headlight Morse code in motorsport. You'll see it in real life just as much in the simulator. But Cassius right now, I think he's definitely trying to get a move on where he can. The only problem is he's caught in this pack. Miller right now is not going to be conducive to just letting Williams and Katios go. So he wants to take on Jordan Butler, who is starting to fall off the pace a little bit, and Katios has got the pace to beat them. The only problem is right now he's got to find his way past a circuit that does not offer sufficient width to do so. But as they make the way out of the corner, Katios, whatever struggles he was having in qualifying, he's definitely now got his car a bit back in form for the race. But to be fair, that's not good news at a circuit where overtaking is so challenging. But could we expect him to potentially go for an undercut strategy here? I'd say if Split Shot Esports wanted to really go all in, they would put him on an undercut strategy, and they would pit him as early as humanly possible, because that way they've got nothing to lose at this point. And well, a bit of clear air could Sonny see him leap up the order later on. But Butler right now under pressure as he heads onto the start-finish straight once again. But this Mercedes, of course, has a lot of acceleration in the lower gears. It's got a very powerful 6.3 litre V8 engine, and that's going to keep him nice and safe in the drag race run, as that's going to be Archie Williams up the inside of Grant Miller, when in the end has to make his way all in, gets a bit clumsy with it there, goes a bit deep off the apex. Miller had to go a bit wider to respect it, but once one comes through, the other does as well, says Katios. And Miller right now loses the 2-place overall, or does he? He's going to still fight down in towards turn number 3. Katios right now is not being given a clear run through it. He's going to go around the outside, more grip on that outside line, but does have to take to the grass there in order to make the move happen. So Grant Miller will lose both overall positions there, drops to 18th, but understandably the 2 pro drives now can go and annoy Jordan Butler, and that's what Miller will be hoping they'll do sooner rather than later. There'll be an absolute nuisance to Butler and force Butler right back to him. That won't work out that way. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Noakes right now going toward the end of the opening 20 minutes of racing. And the NK SimSport driver still keeping that lead around 5 to 6 tenths. But Carl Roy is definitely staying with him in the battle of the 2 Ferraris with Harvey Wheeler and Tim Probert. They are 7 and 8 tenths off of each other respectively. So therefore it is a close quartet at the moment. 5 seconds back to Max Wheeler in the black and gold Verso Fastway freewheeler racing car. That's how you can tell the difference. The Verso Fast ones do have the black background colour to them with the gold lettering and sponsorship. Meanwhile, we do have the other ones, the Verso Rapids, which are the white with gold or blue or black on them. And there's the differential, and the 333 drive right now still has Anton Kilo for close company, although Mikey Stewart, meanwhile, falling a bit further back. And the Exodus Sports with Simcoe Shrine, I think right now be happy to have a bit of a lonely race, because he can just fuel save as race leader in the interclass, and where he can really just manage his strategy as much as he wants. Because it's 7 seconds back to Senate Racing's Hayden Young, who, given how it started and how it's going right now, he's definitely had a happy race. And Hendrik Zilka there with him, and Jordan Maymart, the club leader, still following. And Maymart at this point really in control. But one driver who's definitely trying to control his own destiny here, despite the fact he's missing the entire front end of his Altitude 3M Esports McLaren, is Adam Watson. It all went wrong in the open lap from the lead, But right now he's getting it back together, as meanwhile, Kyle Roy has just lost 2 places. I think he's had a run wide there coming through Sheen Bend. That's normally what happens. You run wide, you rejoin, you give up the place into Sterling's, and, well, we'll get a replay of that very shortly, what exactly has happened. But things are getting a little bit interesting now because Fotis Katios here on the inside of Jordan Butler. Archie Williams passed through Hawthorns and Katios makes his way through. Grant Miller now's going to look for the move here, trying to go the inside to Dingledale. That's not going to work, and Miller's made to wait just a little bit longer as we ride on board. But right now, patience is fitting here for the Scotsman, and will make his way through that left-hander. I think he's definitely going to be channeling a little bit of his son, Hayden Miller, who we know is very quick, but also can be very bold and brash with overtakes when needed. But it's intelligent overtaking he tries to do, and right now Miller all over the back of Butler, but still not able to get through. As I look at my content booth window, and we do have Adam Watson into the pit lane, so it's site anti. So Watson's in, and, well, in doing so, he's going to get the repair work done to the car. It'll be a fast repair, get the fuel in the car, and get going. They've decided out to Grim Esports, but they can't afford to keep losing time in a damaged car. Watson's definitely going to be a treat for the eye to see how far he can come up through the order, as he's already leaving the pit lane. Front bumper back on. He's going to come out there with Tom Cordy unlapping himself from Watson. So Watson's out in 23rd place, and just behind is Ashley Brooks, but that's an important jump over step he's had, because the British driver would not want to get caught up behind the AB Designs driver, who were pitted on the open lap due to the repair works of the car, and therefore has yet to strategically pit. Meanwhile, Thomas Pugh, well, Tom Cordy, I should say, he's definitely going to have to come off of the racing line at some point for the blue flags, and that is going to enable what will be Watson to really get a clear run forward. Meanwhile, Site Anthony's just left the pit lane, so he's made his way back out there, and it does look as though the interclass driver decided that the undercut's going to be the strategy for him, given the damage to the front of the car after his altercation with Katios at Surtees Bend earlier on. Jordan Butler, meanwhile, still keeping Miller at bay, and I wonder if Phoenix Racing Red right now are starting to think more and more to themselves, do we risk the undercut strategy here? We're in third, we are guaranteed third if we stay behind Butler, given Wheeler is 5 seconds behind, but can we gain more here by simply putting him under pressure and seeing whether we can get Butler to react to the strategy? Well, neither one comes in this time, but it's definitely going to be an option there as they make the way up towards turn number 1. But as they do so, we're going to make our way back in time, ladies and gentlemen, to look at some instances for some of our drivers, including what exactly went wrong to Nathan Anstis a few laps ago back on lap number 12. So, this was Nathan Anstis at the time, chasing after Luke Sherlock going up towards Hawthorns Bend. I get the feeling on that tighter line, he's carried a bit too much speed. The answer is yes, so he does rejoin there absolutely safely, but of course, just getting a bit aggressive with his racing lines. Meanwhile, perhaps what's a bit more pertinent to the situation, Kyle Roy, 3 laps later on lap 15. This was the man in second place overall in Pro, chasing after Thomas Noakes, made his way up the hill into a sheen curve, and in the end, went very sideways there through the corner. I think he did briefly touch the grass on entry as well there. It would have been a millimetre of touch, went sideways, caught the car very well, and Kyle Roy in the end falling down to 4th place, but it could have been far, far worse. We did have this from Mikey Stewart on the same lap, and this was Stewart making his way out of Westfield up towards Sheen. And as he did so, what happened here? And the answer was, took a lot of speed and just simply bounced off the apex curb and went wide. He took too much curve as well. That launched the car upwards and caused it to lift essentially, and that's what sent the car straight on there. But got away with that using the weight of the BMW and his throttle pedal just to keep the car planted. James Conley had some difficulty, and this was also on lap 15. The UKSimRacing Norris driver made his way through Surtees Bend, went a bit wide of the apex, but tried to get the power down, and in the end hit the exit curb. The low ride height of the car causing it to bounce out into the barrier there. So for James Conley, we carried on, but that damage is not going to help whatsoever. And then we did have what was this from Casper Brotner. Brotner at the time coming into the pit lane, so this was proof that he's decided to come in. And well, have we got any more information than that? And the answer is no. So we're just taking a look back at a driver coming into the pit lane, and there's plenty more I have. And well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to your live racing. And as we do, we're not quite at the halfway point of this race as of yet. We have had some more pit stops occur. We'll bring up to speed with all those, including a pit stop for David Pilcher in the club class. He decided to pit quite early, so he's taking the strategic gamble. Now, with that, of course, we do have quite a wide pit window here, given the fuel tanks such as are running. We are running to a tune of almost 3/4 of a fuel tank that these cars can take, and that is the standard UKSimRacing balance of the fuel tank performance of these cars. As we do see Butler and Miller still together. Further back, Haley de Jong has pitted as well. He's fallen back to 4th place in the interclass. He's gone early, given the fact he was in the battle with Hendrik Zilka, and I think the Send It Racing driver here has has not helped himself at all. He's come out right in a pack of cars. Well, he has been able to stay ahead of the likes of David Young, Adam Watson and Ryan Clark. Remember that Watson has pitted. He is currently behind Hayden Young, the highest driver who has pitted in this race. The SimRacing driver here is now got trying to clear as Martin Kenyon comes into the pit lane. So that's a tick in the box there for Hayden Young to get him out the way. And now we chasing after Fortis Katios. Well, that's going to be quite helpful. Meanwhile, Ryan Clark battling side by side with David Young here. The Spectre Racing driver going for the move. And that's not going to work. And, well, it's a lovely bit of defence there from Young, just simply holding around the outside. You can see the sparks flying there from where the bottom of the car grounds out on the tarmac as they make their way through that compression out Paddock Hill bend, and uphill they go. It's a very aggressive descent through to an ascent. Right now, Ryan Clark staying right behind there, but knowing that latched onto the back of David Young, he is going to be a bit of a challenge as they fight for track and overall strategic position. As Martin Kenyon leaves the pit lane, of course he started from the pit lane, he now makes his way back out there once again, and hopefully that'll be the last visit he makes to it. He comes out right ahead. Your overall race leader. Blue flags will be shown to him, and immediately Thomas Noakes dives on the inside then to Druids Bend and says to Martin essentially, right, I'm going to make this easy for you. I'm coming through. You get out of my way, please. Well, with that's going to buy him a bit of space to what will be the Wheeler machine just behind. But we come back to Clark, who has just found his way past Brooks and David Young, all in one stroke. And in fact, I think Ashley Brooks has come through behind Clark, and David Young has been passed by the pair of them. And, well, just as quick as that. A bit of a change there. Meanwhile, Grant Miller, he has jumped ahead of John Butler. He's made the move coming out of Clearways onto the start finish straight. We'll have to get a replay of that very shortly, but Grant Miller's up into second place on the road now, and strategically, we believe, for Club versus Jordan Butler in the end could not hold him back any longer. So McLaren driver finally making some magic happen. Well, into Paddock Hill bend, we are Hayden Young taking up Fortis Katios, and here's Adam Watson looking for a move. And Watson's going to go up the inside here, battle the brakes. And right now all the overtakes are happening in very quick succession as Watson gets that done, or does he? He's going to try and squeeze Katios before they get to Graham Hill bend, but Katios goes all in on the brakes. My goodness, I thought he was going to tap the back of Young in the end. Watson goes to the switchback here, brilliant racing between these two. Two away they go, up towards 30s. Watson on the inside, he's just got to get the car stopped now and make sure that Katios can't get the power down. Does exactly that, and the toe of Young's car will help him just to accelerate that Corvette. That Corvette's got a lot of torque, to be fair, and it can hold higher gears as a result of it to save some fuel and also some tyre life. Watson's going to go defensive into Hawthorns. He has to. And remember, Katios has yet to pit, as we understand it, whereas, well, in fact, no, he has pitted, we do believe, and Watson, meanwhile, well the same. So they are fighting for position on the road and strategically right now, fighting for 10th place in Pro, but this is going to hold them back to a degree. Again, the fact they will be naturally losing time to all the Pro drivers up the road in front of them. But brilliant entertainment from them, no doubt about it. And we've had some plentiful entertainment from some other drivers as well. And speaking of that entertainment, as Hayden Young has decided to back out there, I wonder if he picked up a slowdown penalty for track limit. So the Senate Racer drive giving up the places overall to the two Pro drivers, and Ashley Brooks gets a bit closer. But remember, Young and Brooks have both pitted, so they will be fighting on the road now. Although Brooks, we believe, will have to make another pit stop, because he did pit on lap number 1 due to the damage that he picked up from the open lap modifications, and therefore the Access Sport Bandits driver right now has essentially a race whereby he's been battling with a driver who he's not in the same race with, strategically speaking. Still a lot to work out between them, and still Thomas Noakes and Harvey Wheeler, they go another lap. They go on to lap number 22, and as they do, the gap is half a second here, and Wheeler right now is not disappearing for Noakes. The MK SimSport driver here is not able to shake him off, but he is able to make sure that he is still the leader, at least at this time, as we do have none other than what is, I do believe, the car of James Conley now coming into the pit lane, and Conley's definitely had a bit of an up and down day in the races so far. But meanwhile, whilst it's going a bit back and forth for him, we take a quick look back in time to some of the big moments that just happened only moments ago, including some key battles, one of which was Grant Miller making the move on Jordan Butler. Now this was for second place in the club class, and it was the run out of Stirling's Bend, and in the end Butler went one way then the other, made a bit of a double move there, and I think regretted it afterwards. And I think Grant Miller in the end made his way at the inside and thought, right, I've committed to this line, we're going to go all in, and we'll quite the move, and a lovely move there through Clearways, and Butler tucked back in behind here, and the McLaren driver not quite able to be passed back there by Butler. The Mercedes just not having the legs compared towards that acceleration advantage on the McLaren out of the corners. This is what it looked like on board from Grant Miller's perspective. Very close battling between these two. And you can see goes one way, then Butler goes the other. And I think he's realised then, actually, I've made a bit of a double move, so I'm going to have to stay to the outside. And Miller committed to the inside. And what a lovely move there. Great respectful racing from both of them. We then did have, what was this? Ashley Brooks passing. What was Ryan Clark? This was for position. And this was heading up towards what was turn number 1. As they did so, classic move on the inside here, and Clark not fighting it too hard, and Brooks just about getting that done in the nick of time. And we did also have a bit of battling between Fotis Katios and none other Adam Watson, and this was their brilliant battle. And this was for 10th place in Pro, and it was all about the run coming out to turn number 1 there. Watson getting the better run, and Katios coming across, but then realising he couldn't close the door. Too wide, they made the way out of Druids Bend, and then downhill they came in towards Graham Hill Bend. At this point, Adam Watson, seeing that Katios was going to defend on the inside, he went for the switchback. Well, that definitely gave him all the momentum he needed in towards Surtees. It was still too wide there every step of the way. And in the end, getting that move done through turn number 4. They did have to go a bit defensive heading down towards Pilgrim Shop because of the fact that Katios was still close enough. It was all settled and done as they made their way underneath the transfer bridge and in towards Hawthorne's braking zone. Finally, Adam Watson was able to get that move done. But brilliant battle back and forth between those two as we go back to your live racing. As we do come on back, well, now into the second half of the race we are, and as we can see, 29 minutes left to go plus a final lap. We are expecting approximately around 43 to 45 laps today. Will come down to the lap times and also how long spent in the pit lane by our leaders. But Hayden Young still on the back of Katios here after losing the spaces to Watson and Katios due to what was, we believe, a brief slowdown penalty for an off track coming through what was Dingle into Sheen. And well, Katios right now struggling a little bit here. It's going to be too wide between these two as they make the way in towards Hawthorne's Bend. It's a battle for overall position only. As they make the way out, we'll look at Ashley Brooks. Brooks is going to go 3 wide in towards Westfield Bend. You don't normally do that, and Young has to back out in the end. Brooks takes one. Can he take both of them? He's going to go all the way around the outside of Katios. He's going to do it as they come up towards Sheen. Now, of course, Katios on the inside. He's still got a right to battle all the way out towards Sterling's here, but Brooks is defending hard now through the left hand. It's 2-1 as they all come through, but Ashley Brooks right now, somebody's put the fire underneath him, making his way up towards Clearways. Katios down the inside, though. Can he just simply force Brooks out wide? He can, and Brooks right now is going to try and hold it, but in the end switches back at last moment, but finds a face full of Corvette. Here comes Hayden Young once again, so Young's now going to have to go high to the outside on the right. You're picturing his Porsche, and the Syndicate Racing driver is going to go all in here, but it's not going to work out, and Ashley Brooks in the end will just tuck in and take their full place. He confirms it in the interclass, but the problem is that Hayden Young right now is going to be itching from over. There's Tom Cordy behind. Unfortunately for Cordy, he can't get involved in this fight, given the fact he is a lap down, and therefore to get involved here, I think he'd draw the eye of both drivers, particularly anyone he inconveniences. Although Cordy will be thinking, why can't I be part of the battle? A bit of a frustrating moment for him today. A bit further back, David Pilcher, meanwhile, all over the back of David Young. It's the battle of the two Davids. We've seen these two together a few times this season, and they're going to enjoy a bit of a scrap for 7th place on the road in club at least, as more pit stops playing out. Max Wheeler's into the pit lane, so he's decided to come in from the top 5 overall in Pro. And we'll have to wait and see where that's going to put him back into the proceedings. As he makes his way on down pit lane, he's now being serviced. The car's having fuel put in. But meanwhile, back to Katios versus Brooks, and again, too wide through Westfield. It does seem as though on the Grand Prix loop of the circuit, Ashley Brooks right now is absolutely lightning fast, but Katios this time puts the car in the middle of the road and elbows Ashley Brooks just that little bit to say to him, you're not going to go around the outside of me this time, otherwise we're going to do a recreation of what happened in 2021 with the Jota Motorsports McLaren. If any of you remember there, it was the Jota Motorsports car that came into contact with the Acodis ASP Mercedes and got launched into the tree line. Drivers were okay, but it definitely was one of those incidents whereby you couldn't believe it if so. But meanwhile, as they make the way up towards turn number 1, well, right now Brooks defending on that inside line to make sure that firstly Young can't get through, but also secondly he can make the move on Katios and will take it there, and Ashley Brooks at long last might get it done, but Katios comes back up the inside here, but he's a bit too late on the brakes to do so, is he? No, Brooks in the end alludes himself into an error. As I lose my words there, I'm going to come up with the word I thought of very shortly. Goads himself into a mistake. There we go. And in fact, he makes another there coming out of Graham Hill Bend. Katios right now, well, if he's behind you, he's always a threat, no doubt about it. As they make the way up through Surtees, well, Ashley Brooks definitely doing everything right at the moment, but Katios constantly lurking, constantly poking his nose in and just really trying to sight Brooks into a mistake. You can definitely tell right now the Inter driver, he's being given a lesson by a pro of how to essentially put a driver under so much pressure, then in the end they'll just make mistakes naturally, but Brooks seems to finally get this settled down, and Hayden Young missing the front bumper there, I don't think can go any quicker than he's going. He's having to watch the spectacle. He's definitely got the popcorn seat view, as this time Katios tries to go round the outside there, but that's more to take a race line and carry more speed towards Sterling's, but he's going to go wide as Katios comes to rejoin. That will end the battle as Jack Barker right now. And the bottle job machine for Made for Racing, well, carrying onwards, that's what SPJ stands for on the side of it right now. He's definitely not going to want to bottle this battle to try and get into the top 5 in the interclass today. Coming around on the 216 as Katios does come into the pit lane. So Katios coming in, and well, in the end we thought he'd already pitted, but he had not. So therefore the 390 driver comes on down, although, well, he is definitely going to come to a stop there. So it's not a drive-through penalty, it is a strategic pit stop. And meanwhile, Jack Barker now looking to attack Young. I think this is going to be a question of when, not if, he can try and get the move done. He's going to just wait a little bit at this time. Now we are still keeping an eye on the battle between Pilcher and Young, as they are both cleared recently. Peter Holt, but they're still fighting over a certain place in the club class, but the gap has opened up to 6/10. Barker, meanwhile, watching Young at the moment, but that Porsche, whilst it may have some damage to the front end of the car, as he makes way through the corners, he's showing that he's not afraid to attack these corners full on, and that's where the Porsche is able to stay ahead. But it's on the straights here, that's where the Aston Martin is going to close up little by little. And will Barker look for the move this time? The answer is no. But meanwhile, coming down pit road is Jordan Maymar from the lead of the club class. This should be a straightforward pit stop for him and the team. Indeed, there should be no drama for it, as Grant Miller, he makes his way on around. And the man who was leading the club class in the early stages after taking pole position, more an early error, and it cost him quite dear. He's been able to find his way past Jordan Butler, who you see in the rear of the picture there, but right now Maymar still being serviced, and in fact he's just leaving his pit box now. So he's going to be quite happy to note the fact he's only just slipped down to third place in club, so I think he'll feel as though the job is done here once his rivals do pit. As Butler's going to let Max Wheeler up the inside of him through Druids Bend. In, that's going to be a straightforward change. Meanwhile, it's still not pretty straightforward for Barker. He's this close this time, only 10th line, goes up the inside of Young in towards Paddock Hill Bend, and right now will Young try to stay as tight as possible there, try to carry the speed. Barker does not have the confidence to extend the throttle, rightly so, given the fact otherwise he'd understeer wide into the Porsche, but there goes Young, goes a bit too deep. Barker now to the inside, outside line, down towards Graham Hill Bend, onto the brakes, it's going to be too wide all the way through. Some brilliant racing between these two, respectful racing as well, and in the end a little bit of an elbows out moment there between them, but they won't mind that, and Barker in the end will go around the outside. So it's a nice move there. Young gave it everything he could to defend, and Jack Barker now up into 5th place in Inter. Can he chase down Ashley Brooks at this point? He's now 3.5 seconds up the road, and here, so how far can he go? Can he get back onto the podium today, Barker? Will that be the furthest he can go? We will see. As we see them make the way off into the distance coming out of Hawthorne's Bend. And meanwhile, we look back to your Inter leader, Mikey Stewart, who does have Darren Sharples for close company. And Stewart right now still yet to pit, and Sharples has really been growing on pace over the last couple of laps, it must be said. Although, as the Exeter Sports with Sim Coach Drive keeps his head down right now, no mistakes being made. I think really just prioritising, making sure he keeps it nice and tight on the tarmac. Into pits has come Luke Sherlock from second in the Inter class, and Archie Williams is in from 10th in the Pro class as well. Let's wait and see what that's going to demote the Australian driver down to. Further down the order, Thomas Pugh. He's all on the back of what is your race leader there, I believe that is the car. No, in fact, that is not your race leader. It's an MK Simsport car. That's Anton Kelo, who goes up the inside of Kenyon, catching these drivers to put them a lap down at the worst possible place you can, which is the GP loop, particularly that run through Dingledale into Sheen. And in the end, well, he does clear them both, as meanwhile, now it's going to be Pugh under what is a bit of pressure to pass Kenyon, because I think he'll feel as though, right now, Kenyon is just holding his race back a little bit. Kenyon, of course, has pitted and taking a strategic stop, so he's still trying to make his way up the order, and he's still waiting for what is the pit stop of Tom Wheeler to see whether he can get to full place in the club class. So let's wait and see as Archie Williams leaves the pit lane. So Williams now serving that stop, and will Thomas Pugh here go for a move on Kenyon into Druids Bend? The answer is going to be no. Looking back to David Young, he's on the back of Ryan Clark, and in fact, David Pilcher has got away, and that's because Young has recently pitted, so that explains the delta between the two of them. Pilcher, meanwhile, is still yet to pit, so the priority right now, knowing that he's got a bit of work to do to try and make sure that Pilcher does not get the place off him, and Ryan Clark, who had pitted a little bit after Young, has got ahead, but Young's going to go chasing after him, so we might have a three-way battle for 6th place in the club class between what will be Young, Pilcher and Clark, depending on where Pilcher's pit stop puts him. It's going to be a bit of intrigue there. Nathan Anstis out my content booth window comes into the pits as well, I can tell you. So he's going to drop down the order to a degree. But meanwhile, speaking of dropping away, right now there's your leader, and there's Harvey Wheeler. Now that gap doesn't look like it's dropped too much, but that's now 1.4 seconds the gap between the top two. That is a growing gap. It was half a second when we looked at it about 4 laps ago. So therefore, there has been a bit of a poor run. But meanwhile, Jordan Butler's race has come undone there at Surtees, or has it? He gets himself back on the road. He gets himself pointed back in the right direction. But remember, he has yet to pit. And Jordan Maymar the class leader before he pitted. Well, he'll definitely jump ahead, but right now, is it going to be prerogative of Butler, or will it be Tom Wheeler? We'll have to see, because those pit stops still playing out at the moment. The Verso Rapid by Freewheeler Racing driver, well, he'll be hoping he's going to be with a shot of a podium, particularly when he finds out that Butler's made an error. Not biblical proportions, but a sizable one. And Grant Miller, meanwhile, is carried on. So Miller, in the end, will now know that second place in club is going to feel relatively safe as he comes into pit lane here. And as he does so, well, Jordan Butler has not pitted. Jordan Maymar has pitted. So we expect that Butler may go on. But meanwhile, Jordan Maymar will definitely take the lead of the class. Where is Jordan Butler? No, he comes in as well. So he decides it's time to make his way down pit road. Jordan Maymar then will retake the lead of the club class with 20 minutes to go. And well, he's got a clear road in front of him. Tom Wheeler's also in. So in the end, it will, I suspect, be Miller and Butler still in the places they came into the pits. That'll be second and third in the club class. Understandably, Tom Wheeler will be a bit close to Butler after Butler's error. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Noakes is in. Harvey Wheeler's in as well. And Barker's in there, as you can just see, stationary, with the Lollipop Man holding the car in bay. And meanwhile, Noakes makes his way on down. And as he does so, Tim Probert goes another lap. So the Send It Racing Drive is going to go a grand total of what will be 31 laps in this fuel tank at least. He's going to go the longest of everybody so far. Anton Kehler also goes another lap as well. So MK Sim Sport once again splitting the strategies and deciding to have one driver go as far as the fuel tank will allow, with some fuel saving added to it. Whereas Thomas Noakes being already coming in, and Harvey Wheeler follows him in to try and cover him off. But there you can see Noakes will come back out ahead. Wheeler will follow suit, and in the end, the gap between the two of them does go up a little bit more. Wheeler was pushing a bit harder, and therefore has had to put a bit more fuel in the car to the tune of a whole 0.6 of a second. Carl Roy, meanwhile, is 5 seconds by him. And Roy, after his mistake, drops to 4th place. And right now, this is effectively 4th place for him, given the fact we are waiting for some pit stops. In fact, I'll correct myself there. This is, well, is it 4th place? We'll have to wait and see where Tim Probert comes out in relation to Roy. It could be close between them. We know he's on course for a minimum of a 4th here, Roy, as long as he doesn't make any errors at this point onwards. But Probert will be his main, what will be a battling rival for what will be 3rd place on that pro and overall podium. Mikey Stewart, well, he's completed his pit stop, and he's got a 1.5 second gap to Hendrik Zilke. Now, the pit stop for Stewart was a relatively long one, but Hendrik Zilke was even longer. So Stewart's gap has actually been slashed quite a bit. I wonder if the Access Sports for SimCoach Drive has made an error somewhere and we haven't caught it on camera or been informed of it, because that gap has come down sizably. That is not the gap that it once was. He was very comfortably ahead, and we have no information to suggest why, ladies and gents, but definitely the Access Sport with SimCoach driver has got Hendrik Zilke close behind. Also, it is worth considering that Zilke pitted on lap 23, Stewart on lap 30. Zilke may have bought himself quite a bit of clear track by comparison, as Tim Probert leaves the pit lane. Where is Harvey Wheeler? There he is. So therefore, it's going to be Cole Roy who comes out in 4th place, because Tim Probert's back into 3rd, Harvey Wheeler 2nd, and Thomas Noakes is the effective leader in pro. Keep in mind, of course, that Anton Kehler is on top of the timing tower at the moment, but he is yet to pit. So therefore, Noakes, Wheeler, Probert and Roy, that is your top 4 strategically, and that being Harvey Wheeler, of course, running 2nd, and right now trying to close down Noakes. And despite coming out the pit lane 2 seconds behind, has already halved that gap. So Wheeler is pushing hard and trying to get those tyres switched on nice and early compared to the Ferrari's tyres of Noakes. But I think Noakes is just taking his time a little bit. More strategic action happening. Ashley Brooks comes in from 3rd place in the interclass. Of course, it will relegate him down the order because Luke Sherlock will come past. And we do also have Hayden Young to come through shortly. And Cy Anthony is not too far behind. And to be fair to Cy Anthony, given how his race has started, he's made his way all the way back up through the field for UKSimRacing Hamilton. And he's all over the back of Hayden Young. Now, Young does have front-end damage on his car. That will be hurting him considerably lap time to lap time. He is losing about 4 attempts a lap at the moment to Cy Anthony. As Ashley Brooks is leaving the pit lane, he will be coming back out in 6th place in class, well clear of Jack Barker, who served his pit stop, and Barker is just ahead of Peter Holt. So Barker now knows he's got some work to do from 7th in the interclass. He wants to try and get 6th, let alone a top 5. Let's wait and see how all these pit stops do play out for these drivers. But Hayden Young right now definitely having to try and battle uphill. It's going to be Cy Anthony here, looking for a potential move, getting closer and closer. And well, here he goes on the inside as the Welshman for UKSimRacing Hamilton goes away on the brakes into Hawthorne's Bend. It's a straightforward move there, and Hayden Young not able to offer a real defence, getting the damage to the car. And I wouldn't be surprised as well the damage he's picked up where he's close to the drive-through penalty limit, and that'll be for instant points, of course. He may only be a couple points off, and a further contact would send him over that limit. So remember, contacts between cars, if they are registered, they count as a 4 instant point contact, and therefore you pick up enough of those, you'll very quickly find yourself going to the drive-through, and hopefully never a disqualification from the race. So we do have those 2 penalty limits in. But meanwhile, as we do look to Thomas Noakes and Harvey Wheeler, there they are, with Tim Probert closing on them. Probert, remembers, recently only just come out the pit lane, but the Send It Racing driver right now is absolutely pushing hard. I think the McLaren driver wants to get close to both of them early. I think he feels though the longer he waits, the weaker his tyres will become. Meanwhile, Harvey Wheeler and Thomas Noakes are at the opposite end of the spectrum, whereby Noakes, it seems though he's got a knack for measuring those tyres out. As Kyle Roy, well, he comes on through. That was a car running wide just in front of him. That was the lap down car there of, I do believe, Peter Holt, making a bit of a journey out of Sheen Curve, but he made his way back onto the road eventually. Kyle Roy in a bit of a lonely fourth place at the moment with 7 seconds over Anton Kilo, but also 5.5 seconds to the top 3. So today the podium may escape him after that early slide earlier on, but understanding right now he's not out of the hunt yet. Meanwhile, Hendrik Zilka and Mikey Stewart still close together or thereabouts, although we are trying to understand what exactly happened to Mikey Stewart earlier on, given the fact that he has dropped a bit of a way down the order in terms of his times compared to those in front of him. But we will see what is to come for Stewart. Indeed, for all these drivers, they push onwards. Definitely right now for what is your 8th place runner in the 233. It is looking as though this position is increasingly precarious. Well, that's going to be putting a bit of mental pressure on him, no doubt about that, as they come in towards Paddock Hill Bend. And we are just taking a look back at some of his previous lap times at the moment to try and get some information. And there was a bit of an error on lap 22. We didn't get a replay of it, but there was a loss of control for Mikey Stewart. That explains why that lead is nowhere near as grand as we keep thinking it should be, and it is a loss of control on lap 22, and Hendrik Zilga has closed up. So the old Guzzi Cars amnesia drive. And the reason why we wouldn't have seen him close that much, because of course he would have pitted on lap 23, and that would have spread the gap back out. But strategically, well, it's all come back together for Zilka. Can he potentially take the win here for today for old Guzzi Cars amnesia? And if so, well, if he was able to make this happen, it would be a huge result for him, and it would be his first win of the season. So far, his best performance has been a 2nd place in round number 3. But here today, can he go one step further? Will he make it another 2nd place? We will see. But the battles right now, it's all about really seeing how all the field comes together. The update, by the way, on the battle for 6th place in the club class between David Young, David Pilcher and Ryan Clark is that David Young has come back ahead of the 2 of them. You're seeing Clark right now in the white and light green Spectra Racing 139 Porsche, chasing after David Pilcher in the SimRacing Racing UK BMW. But David Young in the Digital Nightmare Racing car has got the best part of 3 seconds over them through pit stops, and Archie Williams is the buffer between them, the pro driver. You can briefly see there off in the distance was the car of David Young. If you squint and you miss it, definitely right now David Young nailing the pit stop strategy there and being able to get ahead by splitting what was his strategy versus Clark to the tune of the best part of 4 laps, and David Pilcher in the empty a bit earlier by comparison. So the overcut definitely working out in David Young's favour. All drivers right now have to keep their heads down. That's the thing now with the way this race has gone. For all these drivers here, whilst they may feel as though it's running nose to tail, that's where the mistakes do happen, because you're looking at the car in front all the time and you become hypnotised by it to a degree, and it's better to have a bit of clear track in front of you, because then you focus on your own lap. Otherwise, you're looking at the back of the front of you're looking at the back of the car in front of you and thinking to yourself, okay, I need to follow that. Where are they braking? And you sometimes start to mimic their braking rather than brake where you need to, and particularly when you've got the concertina effect in motion. But right now, Mikey Stewart is not looking comfortable. That gap to Zilka, as we jump on board looking back out of the rear of the 233, that gap has come down to 4 tenths. It was 8 tenths on the previous lap. Before that, it was 1 second. I wonder whether Stewart's got a problem with the car or whether they're having to do a lot of fuel saving. Have actually, since what Sim Coach made a mistake in the pit lane. Because Stewart right now, the lap times are not safe at all. Zilka's having to back off, understandably, because now he's so close to the back of the interclass leader. Something's just not right here for Mikey Stewart, and I think an opportunity to make it 4 wins this season, it's looking tenuous now rather than comfortable. But still, on to lap 36 he goes, and Zilka there behind, still waiting, watching the wings, and well, no change at the moment at least, as Darren Sharples and Jordan Maymar queue up behind. And, well, understandably for Darren Sharples, I think he would like to clear the pair of drivers in front of him, because I think he's got the pace to chase down Max Wheeler. Jordan Maymar won't mind this too much, given the fact he does have a very comfortable gap to Grant Miller, to the tune of about 15 seconds in class. We do show you the class standings at the moment, and you can see how it all sits for these drivers. Oh, goodness me! And there's contact between Stuart and Zilka, coming out to Surtees, onto the straight they go, and just like that, ends up in pieces. Well, in the end, I think Hendrik Zilka got a better run out of Surtees' corner, but it's collected both of them. And suddenly, well, Luke Sherlock surely is going to come through the scene in the instant. There he is. As Hendrik Zilka comes back onto the road, and well, as they do so, Luke Sherlock takes the one place, and well, Sciente's going to get promoted here. They're all going to get promoted. Where's Mikey Stewart? And Stewart, I think, is on the inside. There he is, and suddenly, Luke Sherlock right now is not going to believe it. He's going to be told over the radio shortly he's into the lead of the interclass. And well, he's still got Sciente for company, and Ante's the quicker driver, so Sciente on one of his home circuits here. Well, the Welshman may just be able to still weigh a win here, and given how the day started, I don't think he's going to quite believe it. Hayden Young as well, missing the front bumper with the Send It Racing driver. I wonder right now where he's going to know very soon the fact he's up in a third place. And do they at this point potentially bring him to pit lane and put a new front bumper on to see whether he can chase down Ante and Sherlock? Well, I think it's too late for that, given they've only got 10 minutes of the race left, and well, it's not too many laps, but the gap he has to Ashley Brooks right now is the best part of about 25 seconds, so he would be very safe. In fact, that gap is more in the region, I do believe, of 18 seconds now we recalculate it. So understand, I think Hayden Young will not want to come into the pits and sacrifice track position, but he'll know that he's just got to drive this car carefully. But what a big instant there. The Hendrik Zilka and none other than Mikey Stewart. And we're going to get a replay of that, ladies and gentlemen, because that was quite the horror show moment there. And I suspect it was just two cars at different speeds out of a bend. But the good news is that both cars are into the pit lane and drivers are all okay. Cars are being repaired. We go back in time to take a look at exactly what happened. And well, it's coming out of Surtees Bend. That camera angle not too helpful. Looks like Stewart just went a little bit wide, and Zilka looked one way than the other, but got too close too soon and just went straight onto the back of Mikey Stewart there. And well, this is what the onboard looked like from Zilka's perspective. You see, Stewart went right, and Zilka here, closing speed most definitely, looked to the right, pulled to left. Were the brakes on there for Stewart's car? I'm taking a look at that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry if I sound a bit bewildered there. Can we just take another look back at that on board there, just trying to understand? Because they made the way out the corner. No, that's the reflection, so my apologies there. There's no lights on the back of what was Mikey Stewart's car. That was just simply the rear lights of the car there, which they are on for the purpose of the replay file. So we were a bit mistaken there, but in the end, just Zilka getting a bit too close to the back of Stewart, collecting on the rear, and it sent both cars on around. And well, in the process, of course, both drivers now falling to the back of the order. Not the way they wanted to go whatsoever. And I'm sure they'll have a chat about it afterwards as we do return to your live racing. As we do come back, well, right now for this man who we do ride on board with, for Hayden Young, he's got clear road in front of him, and all he's got to do as we look to the exterior view is hold it together for what is the best part about another 6 laps, including the one he's on. But meanwhile, for Luke Sherlock, there is Sciente all over the back, and we said Sciente will close up quickly, and that's why we're to hurry back to come into your live racing action, because Ante right now stripping time out of him left, right, and centre. Can Sherlock hold on here, or will Sciente be the one to get through? And remember, both of these drivers right now, in terms of where they've been in the championship, well, neither driver has yet to take a win in class this season. So both of them here will be thinking to themselves, this could be a bit of a magical moment. But Sherlock right now, he's the one with the advantage he does have and track position in his favour. All he's got to do is make that Ford Mustang as wide as humanly possible. The Porsche will be the quicker car out the corners, so Sherlock's definitely got a lot of work ahead of him. He's going to get the best possible exits out the corners and then go as defensive as quickly as he can in the run to next one. But of course, if you're Sciente at this point, the full process can be that, understandably, you can simply try to outfox your rival, keep him guessing, okay, when am I going to go for the move? Am I going to attack here? Am I going to attack there? Such is when you've got the stronger car at the circuit. If you ride aboard the dashboard of the UKSimRacing Hamilton at Porsche 992, but a little bit of power oversteer there coming out of Druids Bend, an easy error to make. That's where the tyres now starting to feel their wear. And Ante close is off camera. Thomas Pugh just found his way past Archie Williams for 10th place in the Pro Class, and I believe Archie Williams has had an off-track moment that's been a part of that story. We're going to stay glued here for a bit of time to the battle for the lead in the Interclass. As Wiper goes on this side, Ante trying to clear his windscreen as much as possible of any stone chips. And coming on through Hawthorne's Bend. No real momentum at the moment, and he's just waiting now. I think he's trying to understand where Sherlock's weaker. We've just seen it into Westfield Bend there. The Mustang practically sliding into the corner with the weight transfer. And through Sheen's a bit slower, but Anthony knows you can't really go for a move into Sheen curve. And it's your 2 wide going through Dingledale by default. But a good run here coming out of Sterling's Bend. That is going to get him a lot closer here as they make the way down. Look into the inside. Does he pull the trigger in it? No, a bit close, but Sherlock goes defensive there. And he takes a run on the racing line. It's going to give him a bit more momentum. And whilst that Mustang is quick, right now that Porsche is going to be quicker where it needs to be. Here he comes, looking to the outside, going for the move in towards Paddock Hill Bend. Will he scoop it around the outside? The answer is no. Waits the opportunity, goes the cut back. But Sherlock sees it coming, parks on Apex and says, no, I've read that one before in a book somewhere. And right on the brakes they go in towards Druids Bend, and Anti still being held back. Brilliant racing between them. Just briefly, we do have in this battle between Martin King and Tom Wheeler, but we're going to leave that behind. We're just showing you it's there for now, because meanwhile, look, Sherlock, a poor run coming down Graham Hill Bend, but Anti taps him on the rear, and that doesn't help either one's case at the moment, so Anti can't get through, and should he do so, there would be an argument. There was a bit of a push to pass moment. Anthony right now, he knows he's got all the cards up his sleeves, but the problem is he's got to be able to put them down on the table here. And Luke Sherlock, who I definitely don't think he's been holding a poker face at the moment. If his face is going to have a tell, it's going to be feeling the pressure. But the Ford Mustang driver here doing everything right, at least at this moment. We are still keeping an eye on some of the battles further down the order, particularly that battle for fourth place in the club class between Wheeler and Kenyon. That's Tom Wheeler, of course, getting those 3 wheelers out on the circuit today, and that due to the fact that, of course, they had a big scrap last time out at Fuji for second place in class. It went the way of Kenyon in the end, but Kenyon still has to try and knock that door down. Battle at the front of the field pro. Noakes has got the gap up to what is at 1.4 seconds versus Harvey Wheeler, so therefore that's looking relatively secure in Noakes' favour at the moment. So it is this battle for the interlead that we're staying transfixed to, as Grant Miller, meanwhile, is closing up to the back of Hayden Young off camera, but that's for overall position, not for points. Coming in towards turn 1, no change between these drivers at the moment, as we've just seen Ryan Clark's had a bit of a moment. What is Graham Hill Bend? We briefly caught that through the camera shot, so therefore he's dropped now out of what would be 6th place, or the fight for 6th place in club, and in fact dropped 7th to David Pilcher as well, so Clark down to 8th in the club class. But meanwhile, we are now 4 minutes to go as the smoke clears there from Clark's incident. And whilst they make their way through Surtees Bend this time, what can Sight Anthony do coming out to the bend? We get some much better run off the corner. Luke Sherlock right now, he's driving increasingly compacted coming out the corners, and that's why he's not using all the road anymore, and that's because he's more worried about what's going on behind him rather than in front, and that's where you lose the time. When you've got a driver this close by and you look more in your mirrors, you don't start thinking about use all the road surface. As Science here cuts the inside, down the dome into straight, up the inside into Westfield Bend. Does he get it stopped in time? He goes to the gravel. Now will Sherlock come back in a minute? He's got the inside through Dingledale into a Sheen. He's going to go for it, Sherlock. It's going to be brave here. There'll be 2 wide in, but Anthony on that outside line, he can't be forced off the road, and Sherlock knows he has to back off, and Science in the end, well, he had to go all in for the move. He took some gravel with him, but Science does take the lead of the interclass, and Luke Sherlock in the end. Well, the Darkwing racing team right now, they're going to be sad about it, but Science in the end, I think it was a question of when, not if he was going to get alongside, and I don't think the Mustang just had enough in the tank to be able to keep what was the fast-flying Porsche of Science behind, but credit where it's due to Luke Sherlock, put up an absolute defensive barrier, and he's not being dropped right now either. This battle is not over yet, so Anthony's just got to try and create the gap where he can. It's not going to be easy, but we take a look back at how exactly that move was made, ladies and gentlemen. And this was the run coming through Hawthorne's Bend, and what you'll see is coming out of the corner, Sherlock driving so compact out the corner, carrying no speed, and Anthony then thought, right, I'm going to go in for it here. He goes up for the move, runs a bit wide, and as he makes his way out of the corner, it was then the run up the hill, but Sherlock came back here, credit where it's due. He decided, right, you know what, we're going to play the game, see if I can hold it all the way to Sterling's Bend, but Anthony on that outside and just able to close the door nicely and return to the racing line. And that's how Science has retaken the interlead, and with it now, well, not too long to go before the checkered flag as we return to your live racing. As we do come back, 2 minutes left on the clock, and we do come back to the 2 battling belligerents, and we can see that gap for Science just slowly creeping open. But for Thomas Noakes, he's on his penultimate lap. We are going to go what will be the best part of 44 laps here today, and as he makes his way on around, well, has recently set what has been one of a personal best lap out there on the second stint. His best lap came on the first stint, a 21.17, as he does find the back there of Jordan Butler's car, so he's going to make a move up the inside then to Sterling's. Harvey Wheeler still the best part of 1.4 seconds behind, but of course the traffic will now cause that gap to oscillate downwards, and the Verso Rapid by Freewheeler Racing driver, he'll be happy with the second place, knowing he didn't really have anything more he could do. But Tim Probert as well, as they cycle their way through cars that are going a lap down to leaders, well, he'll be happy with the third, with what is a 15-second gap almost to Anton Kilo. And Kyle Roy has dropped even further down the order from what I'm hearing. He's now down to 6th place. Adam Watson's found his way through. We have not caught that on camera, but we just observed it. Adam Watson is recovering his McLaren after the open lap incident has moved up to 5th. So impressive there from Watson. But for Kyle Roy, this has gone from good to bad to backwards. A bit difficult there for the Scotsman. We are just trying to understand what's perhaps happened. And, well, the answer is in the end, there was an error on lap 41 for him. So he's made a mistake, and that's relegated him down the order. Unfortunately, we couldn't bring you a replay of that. But meanwhile, the Tom Wheeler-Martin Kenyon battle, that for 4th place in the club class, still raging on. But Wheeler holding on here in the Ford Mustang. And I wonder if Kenyon right now is just having to battle a bit of tyre life in that Lamborghini. But he's still staying there or thereabouts. He's not backing off of this battle. It's brilliant to see between them, because they've got the long line of cars here, and with 15 seconds to go, they're just behind our leaders who have put a lap on them. Speaking of which, well, as they make the way up the hill through Dingledale into a Sheen for their final time, well, right now, no change it would seem. But for Thomas Noakes, so we can see Harvey Wheeler following him. Well, today he took pole position by only 5 thousandths ahead of Adam Watson. Watson got the lead, but lost out Hawthorns on lap number 1. And for Thomas Noakes, it's a return to the very top after what was frustration at Fuji. It has been brilliant at Brands Hatch for the Ferrari driver for MK Sim Sport, and Harvey Wheeler takes the runner-up spot there for Verso Rapid by Freewheeler Racing. Tim Probert puts together his best performance of the season to take 3rd place overall in Pro, with Anton Kilo coming around very shortly, and in the end he will be coming home in what will be 4th place at MK Sim Sport. An absolutely brilliant drive for him, great points for the team. Adam Watson recovers to 5th just behind, and then Kyle Roy will late loss of control, take 6th place ahead of Max Wheeler, who will come through very shortly, and he will be bringing on home at 7th place there for Verso Fast by Freewheeler Racing. Could not quite stay with the leaders today, and then we've got a sizable gap of what is 16 seconds before we do get to Darren Sharples. We have had Jordan Butler finish the race 3rd in club already. He's finished a lap down, but congratulations to him. And then we'll see Darren Sharples coming through in 8th. But looking behind, here is your winner in the club class. It is going to be Jordan Mamo, who makes it back-to-back wins for SimCars Racing UK, 9th overall. He'll be ecstatic about that. Nathan Ansis will come on through in 10th. But behind him, it is a return to the top step of the podium for Cy Anthony for UKSimRacing Hamilton in the interclass, just ahead of Luke Sherlock. And in a brilliant battle to the end for Darkwing Racing. He takes the run-up spot, not quite the winner today, but instead 2nd, but his best performance of the season. And Hayden Young, despite struggling with the car for the entirety of 45 minutes minus the front bumper, he finishes off the inter-podium there with Grant Miller, the man who took pole in the club class. An early error cost him the lead. He takes 2nd, with Jordan Butler just missing out of going the final lap. And ladies and gentlemen, with that completes the finishing order on the lead lap, with everyone else having finished a lap or more down. Martin Kenyon in the end could not quite find a way past Tom Wheeler, who managed to take 4th place in the club class, just ahead of him by half a second at the finish line. But a great battle between them, and well, what a race. And Jordan Butler in the end, he was only 2 tenths off of the back of Grant Miller, but the way it worked out right at the end of the race was, as we understand it, that because Thomas Noakes had lapped what was Jordan Butler literally at the finish line, Miller was allowed to do the final lap of the race, Jordan Butler was not. So therefore, that's explained the difference between them, but those two will be the final finishers on the club podium, as the drivers all cool them down. A great race day here at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Plenty of battle in action. And well, David Pilcher as well, Indian taking that 7th place in club, making sure that Ryan Clark couldn't get close. But unfortunately for him, could not chase down David Young, who in the end had nailed it on the strategy by going for a massive undercut versus Pilcher. And it worked out a treat for the logistical nightmare racing driver to take 6th place in the club class. But as the SimCars Racing UK team come in, and the 2 BMWs lead of the way, Jordan Maymart at the very front there, Stephen Wilkinson at the very back in his Porsche. Well, they'll be happy with that because it is a triple top 10 there in the club class for them. But of course, for Jordan Maymart, it's the most important result a driver could have, is to win the class. And for him, 2 wins in a row. And as they say, when you wait for a bus, It doesn't come, but suddenly they all come at once, and for him was his first league win in 3 years last time out at Fuji, and now suddenly he's taking his second one. Could this be the floodgates opening for Jordan Maymart in the 130? Well, ladies and gentlemen, time will tell as the season goes on. But he's ecstatic about it. We're ecstatic for him and all of our drivers as we take a look to the scenic view, and with it, the race results. And as we can see, after an absolutely epic round of racing here for round number 5 of the UKSimRacing Sunday GT3 Championship Season 18, the Sunday Showdown Series, brought to you from Brands Hatch Grand Prix Circuit and hosted by SimRacing International. Thomas Noakes in taking the win overall for MK Simsport by 1.2 seconds ahead of Harvey Wheeler for Reverso Rapid by Freewheeler Racing. Then it was Tim Probert who completed the top 3 for Send It Racing, delivering what was a very formidable drive in the end, went all in and was able to make sure he finished on the podium ahead of Anton Kalo. The MK Simsport 314 drive in the end, finishing 4th, just off the podium, but to be fair, a good haul of points. His consistent run of form continues. And Adam Watson, given how the day started, well, 5th place in the end, it won't be too sad of a performance. He had the pace to win. He almost took pole position, of course, but in the end, that incident on the open lap cost him dearly, but he was able to get out there and finish the race and took 5th place at Altitude Frame Esports, only 20.6 seconds off the winners. And that tells you everything you need to know in terms of if it hadn't happened, we would have seen an absolute titanic battle between him and Noakes. But still, the way it's played out is the way it is, and he was ahead of Kyle Roy there, who was 2 seconds behind. The Scotsman for Axis and Sport with SimWorks in a couple of frustrating mistakes, and that cost him the opportunity to finish inside the top 5, but still ahead of Max Wheeler for Reverso Fast by Freewheeler Racing, and Darren Sharples was 8th there for Old Dudes in Cars Amnesia. Jordan Maymart took 9th place there, and that was an absolutely brilliant drive from your club winner, the Simcast Racing UK driver, putting it all together in the end and finishing inside the overall top 10. That's a rarity, and he'll be absolutely pleased with that. And Nathan Anstis there, 10th place overall for UKSimRacing Hamilton, just ahead of his teammate. Speaking of whom, it was a special day today for Cy Anstey, coming all the way through from 7th place in the Interclass to take the win, although aided, many would say, by the drama that occurred between the leaders of Mikey Stewart and Hendrik Zilka. But still, sometimes that's the way it goes, and nobody can besmirch the fact that Cy Anstey in the end had to fight his way past Luke Sherlock for the win, and did it with only a couple of laps to go. The Darkwing Racing driver of Sherlock finishing 2nd and into 12th overall. That first win of the season will come, but until then, definitely a very well-driven race in a Ford Mustang that wasn't on the pace today. Hayden Young made it home to 3rd place in the Interclass with a highly damaged Porsche, but the Send It Racing drive didn't give up and took that 13th place. Had a Grant Miller run up in the club class there for Phoenix Racing Red, ruined what could have been after that brilliant pole lap in qualifying, and Jordan Butler rounding off the club podium there, and the Spectre Racing Feet Simworks driver was the first driver to finish a lap down. It was also a lap down to Ashley Brooks and Jack Barker, who completed the Inter top 5, with Barker in the end recovering well from what was the incident going into Surtees Bend early on for Made for Racing, but didn't have enough time to chase down the Axis Simsport Bandits 219. Tom Wheeler, 4th place in the club class there, just ahead of Martin Kenyon, who completed the class's top 5, and from the Aversa Rapid by Freewheeler Racing and Piztech Racing drivers, and there was a bit of time before we got to Thomas Pugh, who completed the top 20. Outside the top 20, 21st, we did see Peter Holt for Send It Racing Bulls, ahead of Archie Williams, with Mikey Stewart in the end finishing the race under his own steam after the damage picked up from his altercation with Hendrik Zilka, and he'll be absolutely ruining the fact that it could have been 4 wins in the Interclass day, but it wasn't to be. David Young and David Pilcher finished behind there, completing a top 25 ahead of Ryan Clark, and then James Connolly was the first driver to finish 2 laps down for UKSimRacing Norris. Tom Cordy, Stephen Wilkinson and Hendrik Zilka completed those who finished the races classified today, and then we did see non-finishes for Fotis Katios, Austin Graff, Casper Brotner, Daniel Pays, Matthew Massey, Jason Brennan, and of course, Darian Giacovelli. But then come into the individual class finishing positions, because this is where the points are made and paid, and as we can see in Pro, it was Thomas Noakes who took victory here for MK Simsport, an absolutely brilliant drive from him, and then coming all the way through to take a superb result, and we're in the end, the MK Simsport driver not looking back, only looking forward. Now we also did get to see some absolutely brilliant racing from none other than was the machinery of Harvey Wheeler, and well, as Noakes took that win, and for him a very valuable win, as the fact it does make it now his 2nd win of the season and a 3rd podium. Well, for Harvey Wheeler, that is going to be his 3rd 2nd place finish for Averso Rapid by Freewheeler Racing, and kept Noakes honest all the way over the distance, but could not find a way to get involved when it mattered most, particularly when they came to the traffic towards the end of the race. Tim Probert taking a 3rd place there, and for him, that's definitely one of his standout results, and indeed a performance which is going to rate very highly. In fact, it's his 1st podium of the season there, and I do believe only his 2nd top 5. His previous best was a 5th place finish at Spa-Francorchamps. So Probert today coming live at the Brands Hatch circuit for Send It Racing, and he was 14 seconds ahead of Anton Kalo for MK Simsport. Adam Watson, 5th place there for Altitude Frame Esports, but keep your eyes out for him in the second half of the season, so I suspect that's not not the last we've seen of him in terms of challenging for wins. And Kyle Roy, 6th place there for Axis Sport for SimWorks. An innocent mistake in his Ferrari cost him very dear as the race went on, and the 327 driver now knowing that, of course, those mistakes are proven to be rather malignant when it comes to championship points. Max Wheeler, 7th there for Verso Fast by Freewheeler Racing, didn't have the pace to stay with the top 6, but definitely had the pace to stay away from Darren Sharples for Old Dudes in Cars Amnesia, and then Nathan Anstis completing those fish on the lead lap for UKSimRacing Hamilton. We've been a lap down for Thomas Pugh, and how that's going to hurt him in the championship hunt, I can tell you, the Axis Sport with SimCoach drive right now. We feel as though he's ended the first half of the season in dismay. Archie Williams was also a lap down with a couple of late off tracks cost him dear, and then we did see the non-finishes for Fotis Katios, who will see the championship lead slip out of his hands going into the halfway point of the season, and the split track esports drive still ahead there of Casper Brockner, who is the earliest retiree for the pro class at Old Dudes in Cars Vintage. Then to the Insta class we go. In the second tier of our classes, a first win of the season for Cy Anstey for UKSimRacing Hamilton, and the team right now will be absolutely jubilant about it because big points are coming their way. He was 2 seconds ahead of Luke Sherlock for Darkwing Racing, who unfortunately could not quite hold on the end, but did very well to take that second place ahead of Hayden Young, who was 11 seconds behind in the wounded Porsche. But to be fair, this result could be critical later on in the season, and sometimes it's the ones that you survive that matter the most when it comes through to taking a crown. Ashley Brooks, 4th there, a lap down in the end, but still best of the rest for Axis Sport Bandits ahead of Jack Barker, who recovered well to a 5th place finish and made for racing, and then Pete Holt, 6th place to Send It Racing Bulls. A strong showing today, even if the lap down nature did not quite comply with it, but then was able to bring home some good points ahead of Mikey Stewart, who finished 7th place in after that late instant between himself and Hendrik Zilka, and the Axis Sport Sim Coach Ryan making sure he got the points, so that way he's now considering it as one of his drop scores. Tom Cordy and to 8th place there for Phoenix Racing Red, 2 laps down. And indeed, the woe continues for the Phoenix Racing Red driver after what was a good start, but it all fell apart. Hendrik Zilka, 9 laps down, but will be classified as a finisher, but in the end not making it to the end of the race on his own steam after the huge incident with Stewart, but within time to be classified as a finisher. And then Austin Graff and Daniel Pays were your retirees for Axis Sports AV Designs and Old Dudes in Cars Vintage. Then coming to the club class, last but by no means least, and here we can see 2 in a row for Jordan Maymar. It is today for Simcast Racing UK, and Grant Miller, 24 seconds behind for Phoenix Racing Red. Not only threw away the win, but he did not throw away the opportunity to take second and close the gap to Martin Kenyon in the standings. Jordan Butler, 3rd place in the end, the first driver to finish a lap down, had a chance to try and take back 2nd place over Miller until he was put a lap down literally at the finish line and was not allowed to do the 44th lap. The Spectre Racing Feet Simworks drive was ahead of Tom Wheeler, who did well to dig deep to hold off Martin Kenyon, and behind the top 5, David Young, 6th place there, using strategy to outsmart David Pilcher, and the Simcast Racing UK driver was able to gradually break away from Ryan Clark for Spectre Racing, who then made a mistake of his own volition and lost all the time at Graham Hill Bend. James Connolly for the UKSimRacing Norris was 2 laps down, just ahead of Stephen Wilkinson for Simcast Racing UK, and sadly we did lose along the way Matthew Massey, Jason Brennan and Darian Giacovelli. And if you're wondering why we did say there were 38 drivers in this race, ladies and gentlemen, well, there was meant to be Alexander Vingmark. He did make his way to the circuit today, but a major technical issue with the car in practice unfortunately meant the car was not able to compete in qualifying nor the race, so therefore we only saw 37 drivers as classified in the race, but we were meant to see a 38th car here, and sadly the Beta Frost driver not able to make it, so therefore he was effectively a non-classified starter. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our rundown of the results, and it completes our brilliant racing today here in what is the West Kingsdown Village Circuit of Brands Hatch. But of course, we must pack up our bags now and get set for our next round of racing. But before we do, well, there's just enough time to bring it up to speed with the standings as they stand provisionally after 5 rounds, as we will be making our way out of the first half of the season. We begin then with the Pro Class. And as we can see, as we transition over the halfway point of the championship, and next time out, of course, making our way to none other than the very challenging and tight circuit, Circuit Zolder, it's Thomas Noakes who leads the way in the pros. 2 wins and a second now. His podium finishes, but a win most importantly at Brands Hatch, finally arresting the decline that started at Mugello and really culminated at Fuji. And well, with that valuable result for MK Sinsport, able to get one back versus the non-finish of Fortis Katios, whose non-finish today moves him back into second place. But behind the split track esports right is then Harvey Wheeler. 3 second places, not quite a perfect run, but right now creating symmetry out of results and up to 300 points. He's definitely in the hunt for the crown, with Kyle Roy only 10 points behind, and the Axis Sport with Simworks Drive falling backwards to 4th on 290 points, but today just not being his day at the office. Max Wheeler, 5th there for Verso Fast, and right now 2 7th places back to back. Not quite on the pace of the top 4, but still holding his own and showing consistency has its own attribution and value, with Thomas Pugh falling to 6th there on 242 points. And that 10th place finish, really not what it was looking for. And right now, the Access Sport with Sim Coach Driver losing ground on the leaders. Tim Probert, with his best result of the season, holds 7th on 230 points. Not too far now off of the top 5. But he is in turn only 20 points ahead of Nathan Anstis, who's fallen to 9th today. Means he falls back to 8th. Archie Williams, 9th there for Access Sports with SimWorks. And 11th place finish here. Continuing the run of results that have seen him finish in 10th place or lower. However, he needs to try and find a way to bounce back inside the top 10 next time out. As otherwise, Adam Watson will be jumping ahead of him very quickly. Although for Watson today, after missing what was Fuji, well, the 5th place there was not what he was looking for, and he was hoping for the win, and therefore we can expect him to dig even deeper next time out at Zolder. Casper Rotner sits 11th at 162 points, 4 behind your top 10, but still 2 points ahead of Matthew Croft, who was not on the grid for this round. Then to the interclass we go, and here we can see Mikey Schutt. It's not 4 wins this season. It's 3 and a 7th place now. And well, understandably, his lead stands, but it has been cut somewhat. Now down to 24 points to Hayden Young, whose run of podiums continues to survive the test of time. 3 thirds and a 2nd. And can he potentially make his way to the top step next time out? Tom Cordy, well, it was an 8th place finish for him, and right now stays in 3rd for Phoenix Racing at red. However, he'll be seeing red on the fact he's not closing the gap to the top 2, but he's still clear of the rest of the field, as headed by Brandon Vincent Squibb, who had now missed Brands Hatch. That becomes a 0 score that he cannot drop, and the Type 2 racing driver will find increasing pressure from Jake Muttit, who did not compete today, so Brands Hatch becomes his drop score for Phoenix Racing Blue, and Jack Barker moves a little bit closer to the top 5 with 5th place finish for Made Racing, moving up into 6th. Luke Sherlock also propels himself forward. Now in 7th place there for Darkwing Racing, his best result of the season, that's 2nd place. Indeed, his 2nd top 5 of the season. His previous best, of course, being the opening round of 5th place there. He'll be pleased with that, although gutted not to take the win. But I suspect we're going to see even more from Luke as the season goes on. Hendrik Zilka falls to 8th place there. That non-finish proving very costly. When it was all looking good for a podium, if not a chance of the win, the old dudes in cars drive, unfortunately, seen it all go into the bin. And well, the Swiss driver now knows he's got to get his head down going into the second half of the season. Peter Holt just behind there, 2 points adrift, another top 10 result, behind the Sendit Racing driver. Cy Anthony, his first win of the season, and well, now will we see the wins flow for him like they have for the other drivers when they've taken their first win, such the likes of Jordan Butler? Well, not Jordan Butler, Jordan Maymar, we should say. We'll have to wait and find out, because the Welshman right now definitely looking to be quite quick and formidable when things come his way. Ashley Brooks, 4 points behind us, sits outside the top 10, but ahead of Eduardo Royes, who completes your top 12 in the interclass. Meanwhile, to the club class we go, and for Martin Kenyon, well, his first non-podium finish, but the good news is, it never happened as far as drop scores are concerned, so therefore he continues his run of 3 wins and a 2nd for the counting points. But Grant Miller has closed that gap a little bit, given the 2nd place today, so therefore he'll know that right now he's starting to build that run up once again. But the Phoenix Racing Red driver will also know that by missing the win today, he's definitely cost himself some very valuable points in the long term. Tom Wheeler, 4th place, the Averso Rapid by Freewheeler Racing driver, making sure he can stay ahead of Martin Kenyon, but not quite on the podium. But he'll feel as though right now the confidence is growing that perhaps he can get closer to the top 2. But he's only ahead of Jordan Maymar based on result count, back with back-to-back wins, propelling the SimCast Racing UK drive to 278 points, and now ahead of Jordan Butler, who sits 5th for Spectra Racing. Still a 3rd place for him, his first podium of the season. He'll be pleased with that, but he'll know there's still a bit more work he needs to do in order to move forward there and get into that top 3. And Stephen Wilkinson slips back to 6th, but to be fair, not his hunting ground today here at Brands Hatch, but could we see him back in the top 5 next time out? Behind him, Alexander Mingmark missed this round, but classified as a non-finisher as the car was in attendance in the practice session, and therefore the Base Force driver will commit this round as a drop score, but he'll be ahead of Matthew Massey by 24 points, a non-finish as well for the Spectra Racing driver, and David Young moves that a little bit closer after a solid finish in none other than 6th place, his best result of the season. Ryan Clark completes the top 10 for the club class, just ahead of David Pilcher, who sits 11th, only 12 points behind, and James Connolly's not too far adrift either, in 12th down 174 points. As for the team's championship standings, well, here we can see Phoenix Racing Red, they've moved back on top. And well, in doing so, not by much, but they are ahead of Access Sports with Sim Coach there to the tune of what is none other than 30 points, with Grant Miller bringing home some very solid points, and Tom Cordy, whilst it may not have been his day at the office, still bringing home some valuable points, and it's all key at this point in the season. Access Sports with Sim Coach falling backwards then to 2nd place, and they are only 18 points ahead of Verso Rapid by Freewheeler Racing, who are moving forward and getting that little bit closer. We then do see Send It Racing as well, closing the gap But the notable thing is here in terms of the bigger picture, look at how now the top 4 have broken away from 5th place. MK Sim Sport, they've launched their way back into the top 5. Were first and a 4th today for Noakes and Kayla respectively in the pro class. But now they know they need to continue this form and perhaps even tweak it a little bit more, because right now the top 4 are definitely starting to move into a world of their own. But behind them, we can see in 6th place, Simcast Racing UK on 478 points. Hasn't quite been the day for both drivers, although Jordan Maymar bringing home that win will definitely be buoyant to the team. But they'll be hoping that Wilkinson can chase down a top 5 next time out. And if Maymar can make it 3 wins in a row, they'll definitely be on course to get back into that top 5 and establish themselves as one of the potential favourites to be a top time finisher this season. Still, behind them, Axis Sim Sports with SimWorks there. It's only been a downhill day today for them. They fall to 7th place, but they're still 20 points ahead of Pistech Racing, who also fall down with no Jonathan Slade on the grid, and Martin Keane taking 5th place. It's not been a happy hunting ground in the United Kingdom, and Splitstrat Esports looking dangerously close now to falling outside the top 10, although they are still ahead of Spectre Racing by 4 points, who complete the top 10 there. The combination of Matthew Massey and Ryan Clark not having a happy day at the office. There's a lot more work that needs to be done. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that completes our rundown of the provisional standings after 5 rounds of racing, and it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know how you can get on the grid at SimRacing International, or at least join the community and get to know what goes on behind the scenes, and consider perhaps joining even our practice league, well, the good news is, all you need to do is join our official Discord. Invite link at the bottom of your screen, easy to do so, and you won't find a more welcoming community. And whilst we may be based in the United Kingdom, that's where we operate out of, you're welcome to join from anywhere in the world, whether you be based on the European continent, in the US of A, all the way over in Asia, you name it, you are welcome to be part of the SimRacing International community. And when you do join, you could be potentially on the grid for any of the following ongoing series, including our Thursday evening GT3 Championship, currently in its 12th rendition, with the Masters and Superstar splits. Alternatively, if you're a big fan of GT racing, but you want something a little bit more challenging as it was seen in the heyday of its era, of course, we do have the Grand Touring Endurance Car Championship that does run on Friday evenings. Currently, it's in 2nd instalment. And that does run, and it's right the way midway through the season at the moment, and it's exciting action there. Alternatively, if you're a weekend racer and you love your GT3s, who doesn't, to be fair, well, you've been tuning in to the UKSimRacing Sunday Showdown series as of today, and of course we do have spots available on the grid there every Sunday evening, and it's currently in its 18th instalment. But if you're looking to go for something far more casual, perhaps you don't want to pay to be on the grid at this time, or perhaps you just want to gradually dip your toes into the league racing format, well, of course we do have free races per week in our practice league, which does run on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Saturdays, so there's never been a better time to be on the grid at SimRacing International. We'd also like to take a moment, ladies and gentlemen, to say a big thank you to our series and league sponsors, who do include Carmate, Modern Technology, the GP2 Group, and lastly, we'd like to give a big shout out to Motorsport UK's esports division for recognising us here at SimRacing International as a recommended community. We're very grateful for that recognition, and long may it continue. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now turn our attentions to next time. And next time up, well, there's no break for our drivers as they make their way into the second half of the season, because we go straight into it. And next time out, we're making our way back to Belgium for everybody's second favourite circuit in the country, and that is, of course, Circuit Zolder, and with chicanes, short straight, and heavy braking zones, and a few sweeping bends as well. In an odd way, it's going to feel as though it's Brands Hatch on steroids as far as the racing is concerned, and we'll find out how the story continues on Monday, the 11th of May, 2026, whilst the racing will occur on the Sunday, the 10th of May. We'll bring it to you as if it were live the day after, as per usual. And as we do head into the second half of the season, where it's definitely Thomas Noakes from MK Sim Sport has got himself back on top in the pro class, at least for now, but he knows the competition is fiercely chasing after him, but everyone seems to be slightly dropping the ball at certain points, whereas meanwhile in the interclass, the story is all about a change in the guard perhaps, and so Mikey Stewart, it has been a big blow to his opportunity to take 4 wins this season, but still, he leads, but he knows he has got Hayden Young surviving behind and keeping his podium streak going, and therefore could Hayden Young potentially come into what will be his peak in the second half of the season. Meanwhile, in the club class, with back-to-back wins, many now will be looking at Jordan Maymar and thinking, could he potentially chase down the likes of Martin Kenyon for the crown, and also Grant Miller, who threw away an opportunity and a golden win today. All that and more, you'll have to see next time out, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue the story. But until then, we've been SimRacing International, you've been tuning into the UKSimRacing Sunday Showdown series, and I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.